The grand chamber of Nexus Prime Station stretched 300 meters in every direction. Crystalline walls caught and refracted light from a dozen different suns, creating patterns that would have been beautiful under different circumstances. Today the chamber felt like a tomb. Ambassador Elena Kovac stood alone at the center of the circular floor. Above her, arranged in rising tiers like an ancient amphitheater, sat representatives from 12 alien species. Each one looked down at her with expressions ranging from pity to contempt. The weight of their collective gaze would have crushed a lesser person. Elena had been a diplomat for 23 years. She had negotiated trade agreements, settled border disputes, and once talked down a fleet commander who was seconds away from glassing a colony world. But she had never faced anything like this. High Arbiter Zelthon rose from his seat at the highest tier. He was a Corthelian, a species that had ruled their corner of the galaxy for over 10,000 years. His body was covered in metallic scales that clinked softly as he moved, forearms spread wide in a gesture that seemed welcoming, but was actually a display of dominance. Ambassador Kovac. Zelthon's voice echoed through the chamber, translated instantly into her earpiece. We have summoned you here to deliver the judgment of the galactic confluence. Your species has been evaluated. You have been found wanting. Elena kept her face neutral. Years of training kept her breathing steady. Her posture relaxed. Wanting in what way, High Arbiter? In every way that matters. Zelthon gestured and holographic displays materialized throughout the chamber. Images flickered to life, showing human ships, human colonies, human soldiers. In the mere 2 centuries since your kind achieved faster-than-light travel, you have established colonies on 47 worlds. You have expanded your territory by 12% each decade. You have built a military fleet that grows larger every year. We have colonized uninhabited worlds, Elena replied calmly. We have not attacked anyone. We have not taken what belongs to others. A chittering laugh came from the third tier. Ambassador Zilith, representing the insectoid Vrex Collective, leaned forward. You expand like a virus, human. You consume resources, you multiply without control. You push ever outward. It is your nature. A dangerous nature. Another voice joined in. This one belonging to Ambassador Trell of the Harmonious Unity. We have seen species like yours before. Always they say they come in peace. Always they say they only want to grow. And always eventually they turn to conquest. It is better to prune the tree before it bears poisoned fruit. Elena felt her jaw tighten. She forced herself to relax. You're afraid of us. Silence fell across the chamber. Several ambassadors shifted uncomfortably. Zelthon's scales rippled, a sign of irritation. We are not afraid, Zelthon said coldly. We are cautious. We are wise. We have maintained peace in this galaxy for 7,000 years. By identifying threats before they can metastasize. Humanity is a threat. Based on what evidence? Elena demanded. Show me one act of unprovoked aggression. Show me one treaty we've broken. Show me one species we've wronged. Zelthon gestured again. New images appeared. These showed human soldiers firing weapons, human ships engaging in combat, human cities burning. Elena's blood ran cold as she recognized what she was seeing. The Talvex incident, Zelthon announced. Your forces attacked a civilian transport, killing 6,000 innocents. That's a lie. Elena's composure cracked. The Talvex were raiders who attacked our colony first. We responded in self-defense, and we went out of our way to minimize casualties. The Gentarim massacre, Zelthon continued, ignoring her protest. More images. Your troops executed prisoners of war. Those weren't prisoners. They were pirates who had just murdered 300 colonists, including children. The siege of Terminus Station. More images, more death. Your fleet destroyed a neutral space station, violating the Sanctuary Accords. Elena stared at the images. They were real footage, but edited, context removed, truth twisted into lie. Someone had been very thorough in building this case against humanity. This is propaganda, she said quietly. You know it is. Every one of these incidents was an act of self-defense or law enforcement. You've stripped away the context to make us look like monsters. We see what we see, Zelthon replied. And what we see is a species too aggressive, too expansionist, too unpredictable to be allowed to continue unchecked. Therefore, the galactic confluence has reached a decision. He spread all 4 arms wide. The other ambassadors rose from their seats in unison. Humanity will dismantle its military fleet, Zelthon declared. You will surrender control of all colony worlds beyond your home system. Your species will accept confluence oversight. With observers placed in your government and military command, you will submit to regular inspections to ensure compliance, and you will pay reparations to the confluence for the cost of managing your species. Elena felt as if the floor had dropped away beneath her feet. You're demanding our complete surrender. Our enslavement. We are ensuring galactic peace, Zelthon corrected. Your species will be protected, fed, housed. You will be safe. You simply will not be free to threaten others. And if we refuse? Zelton's expression was unreadable, but his tone was clear. Then you will be eliminated. We have positioned siege fleets in orbit of Earth and your 16 largest colonies. We have weapon platforms aimed at your industrial centers and population hubs. If you do not comply, we will reduce your species to pre-spaceflight levels. You will be confined to your home world, your technology stripped away, your civilization set back 1,000 years. You would commit genocide, Elena whispered. We would perform a necessary amputation, Zelthon replied, to save the rest of the body from infection. The choice is yours, Ambassador. Surrender peacefully or be destroyed. You have 72 hours to deliver your government's response. Elena stood motionless for a long moment. Around her, the assembled ambassadors watched with varying expressions. Some looked smug. Some looked regretful. None looked willing to challenge Zelthon's pronouncement. Finally, Elena looked up at the High Arbiter. When she spoke, her voice was steady and cold. High Arbiter Zelthon, distinguished members of the Confluence, I have listened to your ultimatum. I have seen your so-called evidence. I have heard your judgment of my species. She paused, letting the silence stretch. And I find you guilty of the same crime you accuse us of, hubris. Zelthon's scales rippled again. You dare. You have made a grave miscalculation, Elena continued, speaking over him. You look at humanity and see only 2 centuries of history. You see a young species barely out of its cradle, and you assume we are weak. You assume we are naive. You assume we will either submit or die quickly. You have no choice, Zelthon growled. We have superior numbers, superior technology, superior position. Your fleet cannot stand against the combined might of the confluence. Your defenses will crumble. Your cities will burn. You cannot win, Elena smiled. It was not a warm expression. You've positioned siege fleets around our worlds. You've aimed your weapons at our homes. You've prepared to destroy us. She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of each ambassador in turn. But you made one critical error. You gave us 72 hours. You gave us time to respond. You gave us time to show you exactly what humanity has been building while you dismissed us as irrelevant children. Nothing you have can stand against us, Zelthon declared. We have catalogued your fleet. We know every ship, every weapon, every defense. You are outmatched in every category. You know what we've shown you, Elena corrected. You know what we've allowed you to see. But there's so much you don't know. So much you never thought to look for because you were so certain of your superiority. She reached into her jacket and withdrew a small device. Several guards in the chamber raised weapons, but Elena simply placed it on the floor and pressed a button. A holographic display appeared, showing star charts and fleet positions. These are your siege fleets, she said, highlighting each position. 300 capital ships, 6,000 support vessels, all positioned to strike at humanity's heart. It's an impressive display of force. Under normal circumstances, it would be overwhelming. It is overwhelming, Zelthon snapped. Accept reality, Ambassador. Surrender and your people will live. Refuse and they will die. Elena's smile widened. High Arbiter, before I came to this chamber, I sent a single message to my government. 3 words. Protocol Omega, let them see. What does that mean? For the first time, Zelthon sounded uncertain. It means, Elena said softly, that you're about to learn why you should never corner a species that refuses to die quietly. It means you're about to discover what humanity does when faced with extinction. It means you're about to witness something that no one in this galaxy has ever seen before. She tapped another command on her device. New data appeared, showing velocity readings and energy signatures. 72 hours, you said. That was generous of you, High Arbiter. But we only needed 48. In 24 hours, you'll understand your mistake. In 24 hours, something will arrive at Nexus Prime. Something we've been building in secret for 15 years. Something none of your scouts detected, none of your spies reported, none of your analysts predicted. You're bluffing, Zelton said, but his voice lacked conviction. Am I? Elena gestured at the holographic display. Your own sensors will confirm it soon enough. There's a mass signature approaching this system. It's moving faster than anything in your records. It's bigger than anything you've ever constructed. And it's not stopping. Silence fell across the chamber again. This time it was different. This time there was an edge of uncertainty. Ambassador Zillith's antennae twitched nervously. What have you sent? Elena looked up at the assembled confluence and her expression was no longer diplomatic. It was the look of someone who had been pushed too far, who had nothing left to lose, who was done playing by rules designed to keep her species subordinate. We sent you a message, she said quietly. Written in steel and fire and human determination. We sent you the culmination of everything we've learned since we reached the stars. We sent you the reason why you should have left us alone. She walked toward the exit and the guards parted nervously to let her through. At the threshold she turned back one last time. You wanted to judge humanity, High Arbiter. You wanted to determine if we're worthy of a place in your galaxy. Well, judgment goes both ways. In 24 hours, we'll see if you're worthy of the power you claim. In 24 hours, you'll face something that will redefine everything you think you know about warfare, about technology, about what's possible. What is coming? Zelthon demanded. Elena's last words echoed through the chamber as she disappeared through the doorway. The Indomitable. Commander Marcus Webb stood on the bridge of the Indomitable and watched the stars bend around his ship. The view screen showed streaks of distorted light as the vessel tore through subspace at speeds that would have been called impossible 6 months ago. Now it was simply Tuesday. Status report, he said calmly. Lieutenant Jarek Nowak looked up from the tactical station. The young officer's face glowed in the light of his displays. Quantum drives operating at 98% efficiency, sir. We're maintaining velocity. Hull integrity at 100%. All weapon systems primed and ready. We'll reach Nexus Prime System in 19 hours. Webb nodded. 19 hours until they either saved humanity or died trying. Probably both. Commander, we're receiving the activation codes now. The communications officer, a middle-aged woman named Sarah Chen, turned in her seat. Protocol Omega confirmed. Ambassador Kovac has delivered the ultimatum. The confluence gave us 72 hours to surrender or face extinction. And how long ago was that message sent? 43 hours, sir. Webb allowed himself a thin smile. Then we're right on schedule. Acknowledge receipt and confirm our ETA. Let the ambassador know we're coming. He walked to the center of the bridge, hands clasped behind his back, and looked around at his crew. 200 officers and technicians worked at stations arranged in concentric circles around him. Beyond them, through reinforced corridors, another 11,800 crew members manned their posts throughout the massive vessel. Every one of them had volunteered for this mission. Every one of them knew they might not come home. Chief Engineer Chen, report to the bridge, Webb said into his communicator. 5 minutes later, Dr. Amara Chen stepped onto the bridge. She was no relation to Sarah Chen despite sharing a last name. For the communications officer was calm and professional, the chief engineer was barely contained chaos. Her gray hair stuck out in several directions, and there was what looked like grease on her collar. You rang, Commander? Amara said, wiping her hands on a rag. I want to make sure we're ready for what's coming, Webb replied. Give me the real status, not the official one. Amara grinned. The Indomitable is a beast, Marcus. A beautiful, terrifying beast. We've got 2 quantum singularities contained in magnetic bottles, each one producing more power than a small star. Our metamaterial armor has been tested against every weapon type in our database. The reactive matrix can adapt to energy weapons, kinetic impacts, even exotic particle beams, and the Helios array. She paused, her expression shifting to something between awe and fear. The Helios array is ready to remind the galaxy why they should have left us alone. Will it work? Webb asked quietly. It worked in simulations. It worked in controlled tests, but we've never fired it at full power, not in a real combat situation. Amara met his eyes. It should work. It will work. But if I'm being honest, there's a 5% chance something catastrophic happens when we pull the trigger. Define catastrophic. The containment field collapses, the plasma feedback loop destabilizes, and we turn ourselves into a small supernova. Amara shrugged. But hey, 95% chance that doesn't happen. I'll take those odds. Webb had worked with Amara for 8 years. He knew she used humor to cope with stress. He also knew she wouldn't have signed off on the system if she wasn't confident it would work. How many people out there know what we're carrying? He asked. In the confluence? Maybe a handful of their top scientists could theoretically understand the principles, but they'd dismiss it as impossible. In humanity, about 200 people know the full specifications. Another 1,000 know pieces of the puzzle. Everyone else just knows we built something big and scary. Lieutenant Nowak spoke up from his station. Sir, permission to speak freely? Granted. The young officer stood. I've been reading the specifications since we launched. I understand the Helios array, the quantum drives, the adaptive armor. What I don't understand is why we built just one. If we can make a ship like this, why not build a fleet? Webb had been waiting for someone to ask that question. Walk with me, Lieutenant. He led Nowak to the observation deck, a transparent dome that offered an unobstructed view of the distorted space around them. Other crew members were present, but Webb found a quiet corner. What do you think war is, Lieutenant? Webb asked. Nowak frowned. I don't understand, sir. War, conflict, battle, what is it? It's when two sides use force to impose their will on each other. Nowak replied slowly. That's one definition. Here's another. War is what happens when communication fails. It's the last resort of species that can't find a better solution. Webb gestured at the view screen. The confluence didn't declare war on us because they hate us. They declared war because they're afraid. They see us expanding, growing, becoming stronger, and they're terrified that one day we'll be strong enough to challenge their power. So we are a threat, Nowak said. Of course we are. Every species that refuses to stagnate is a threat to the established order. But there's a difference between being a potential threat and being an actual aggressor. The confluence couldn't tell the difference, or didn't want to. So they decided to eliminate us before we could become dangerous. Webb turned to face the young officer directly. Now, to answer your question. We didn't build a fleet because a fleet implies we want to conquer. A fleet says we're coming to take territory, to occupy, to dominate. One ship, though. One ship says something different. What does it say? It says we're capable of building something that can stand against your entire navy. It says we don't need numbers when we have innovation. It says we're not interested in conquest, but we're absolutely capable of self-defense. One ship is a statement. A fleet would be a threat. Nowak nodded slowly. But sir, what if one ship isn't enough? Webb smiled grimly. Then we make sure this one ship is so devastating, so overwhelming, so absolutely terrifying, that no one ever wants to test whether we could build a second one. An alert tone sounded throughout the ship. Webb's communicator chirped and Sarah Chen's voice came through. Commander, you need to get back to the bridge. We're picking up something on long-range sensors. Webb and Nowak hurried back to the bridge. The main view screen had switched from the navigation display to a tactical overview. Red icons filled the screen, hundreds of them. What am I looking at? Webb asked. Sarah worked her console. Long-range passive sensors detected a massive fleet concentration at the edge of the Nexus Prime system. They're in a blockade formation, probably intended to intercept any human ships attempting to reach the station. How many ships? Preliminary count shows 300 capital ships, ranging from light cruisers to dreadnoughts. At least 6,000 support vessels. It's the largest military gathering in recorded history, sir. Lieutenant Nowak whistled softly. They really want to make sure we don't get through. They know we're coming, Amara said. She had followed them back to the bridge. They must have detected our approach. They're scared. Good, Webb said. Fear means respect. They're taking us seriously. Sir, at our current trajectory, we'll reach their blockade in 18 hours, Sarah reported. They'll definitely have targeting locks by then. Shall I calculate an evasion course? Webb considered for a moment. The smart tactical decision would be to approach from an angle. Try to minimize the number of ships that could engage them at once. But smart tactics weren't the point of this mission. Negative. Maintain current course and speed. Take us straight through the center of their formation. The bridge fell silent. Every officer turned to look at him. Sir? Sarah's voice was uncertain. That will put us in range of every weapon they have. We'll be taking fire from all sides. I know. They could concentrate their entire fleet's firepower on us, even with our armor and shields. I know, Webb repeated. But we're not here to sneak past them. We're not here to outmaneuver them. We're here to show them that their entire fleet isn't enough to stop us. Maintain course. Yes, sir. Sarah's fingers moved across her console, confirming the trajectory. Amara leaned close to Webb and whispered, You know this is insane, right? Completely, Webb agreed quietly. But it's the right kind of insane. If we avoid their fleet, they'll think we're afraid. They'll think we had to use tactics and cleverness to survive. We need them to understand that we don't need tactics. We need them to see us fly straight at them, absorb everything they throw at us and keep coming. And if the armor doesn't hold, then we'll have about 30 seconds of being very surprised before we're vaporized. Webb raised his voice to address the bridge. All hands, this is the commander. In 18 hours, we will engage the Confluence blockade fleet. They outnumber us 300 to 1. They have home field advantage. They have every tactical benefit except one, they're not us. He paused, looking around at his crew. Some looked nervous. Most looked determined. A few looked eager. Humanity has been counted out before, Webb continued. We've been dismissed, underestimated, written off. Every time we've surprised everyone by refusing to die quietly. Today we do it again. Today, we show the galaxy what happens when you push humanity to the edge. Today we show them why they should have left us alone. He took a breath. The Confluence thinks this is a battle between their fleet and our ship. They're wrong. This is a test. A test of whether superior numbers can overcome superior determination. A test of whether an old empire can suppress a young species that refuses to submit. A test of whether the future belongs to those who cling to power or those who fight for freedom. Webb's voice hardened. In 18 hours, we're going to answer that test. And the answer is going to echo across this galaxy for the next 1,000 years. All hands to stations. Prepare for combat. And remember, we're not just fighting for ourselves. We're fighting for every species that's ever been told they don't matter. That they're too small, too young, too weak to have a voice. We're fighting for everyone who's ever been pushed down and told to stay down. He looked at each officer in turn. So let's give them a fight they'll never forget. The crew returned to their stations with renewed focus. Orders were relayed throughout the ship. Weapons were charged. Shields were strengthened. Crews ran final checks on every system. Webb returned to his command chair and activated the ship-wide intercom. This is Commander Webb to all crew. Battle stations in 17 hours. Get some rest, check your gear, and say whatever prayers you need to say. When we engage the Confluence fleet, I need every one of you at your best. Webb out. He leaned back in his chair and closed his eyes for a moment. 15 years ago, when construction on the Indomitable had begun, he had been a junior officer on a patrol ship. He had watched the first hull plates being laid, watched the quantum drives being installed, watched a dream slowly become reality. They had built this ship in secret, in a hidden facility in a dead system far from prying eyes. They had recruited the best engineers, the best scientists, the best military minds humanity had to offer. They had poured resources into a project that most people would have called impossible, and now that impossible ship was about to crash headlong into the Confluence's entire fleet. Webb opened his eyes and smiled. Impossible was just another word for something that hadn't been done yet. 17 hours, he said to no one in particular. Time to change the galaxy. Fleet Admiral Korthax had commanded warships for 67 years. He had fought in 14 major engagements, crushed 3 rebellions, and earned more medals than he had chest space to display them. In all those years, across all those battles, he had never once felt afraid. Until now. Status report. He growled from his command throne aboard the dreadnought Eternal Dominance. Around him, dozens of officers worked frantically at their stations, monitoring the approach of something that should not exist. The human vessel continues on direct approach, his tactical officer reported. Her voice trembled slightly. Velocity holding steady at 0.97 light speed. Mass readings are off the scale. Sir, this thing is 8 kilometers long. It's 3 times the size of our largest dreadnought. Korthax stared at the tactical display. The red icon representing the human ship moved inexorably toward the center of his formation. 300 capital ships arranged in a perfect blockade sphere, bristled with weapons. 6,000 support vessels filled the gaps, ready to add their firepower to the defense. It was the most formidable military concentration in 1,000 years, and the humans were flying straight at it without slowing down. Communications. Have they responded to our hails? Negative, sir. They're ignoring all channels. They haven't even acknowledged our presence. Then make them acknowledge us, Korthax snarled. All ships weapons free. Fire a warning volley across their bow. Let them see what they're up against. Orders flashed through the fleet network. 200 ships adjusted their aim and fired. Energy beams, plasma bolts, and kinetic rounds streaked across the void. They converged on a point 100 kilometers ahead of the approaching human vessel, creating a brilliant display of destructive power. The human ship didn't even twitch. They're not responding to the warning shot. Admiral, I can see that, Korthax snapped. Navigation, calculate their trajectory. When will they reach engagement range? At current velocity, 47 minutes until they enter our outer weapons envelope. 32 minutes until optimal firing range. Korthax activated the fleet-wide channel. All ships, this is the Admiral. The human vessel is approaching at combat speed with hostile intent. When they enter range, all ships will open fire. We will cripple their engines and force them to surrender. Hold your positions and stand by. He switched to a private channel with his old friend Captain Zendril, who commanded the cruiser squadron on the blockade's southern arc. Zen, what do you make of this? Zendril's voice came through with barely contained worry. I make that either they're suicidal or they know something we don't. No sane commander flies a single ship straight at an entire fleet. My thoughts exactly. Keep your sensors active. Watch for tricks, decoys, anything unusual. Sir, the whole situation is unusual. We're facing a ship that's bigger than anything that should be able to move, flying faster than anything that size has any right to go, heading straight toward 300 warships without hesitation. If this isn't unusual, I don't know what is. Korthax couldn't argue with that logic. He cut the connection and focused on the tactical display. 30 minutes until engagement range. 30 minutes to see if the Confluence's superiority was real or just assumed. On the bridge of the Indomitable, Commander Webb watched the timer count down. The viewscreen showed the Confluence fleet as red icons arranged in a perfect sphere. It looked impressive. It was impressive, it wasn't enough. Lieutenant Nowak, status on enemy fleet positions? They're holding formation, sir. No movement. I think they're planning to catch us in a crossfire when we reach the center of their formation. Of course they are. It's what I would do. Webb turned to Sarah Chen. Any communication from the fleet? They fired a warning shot 10 minutes ago. Otherwise, radio silence except for internal fleet chatter. They're nervous, sir. The intercepts show a lot of uncertainty in their command structure. They should be uncertain, Amara said from her station near the engineering console. They're looking at a ship that violates half the laws of physics they think they understand. Quantum containment, reactive metamaterials, gravitic manipulation. We're using technology they think is theoretical at best, impossible at worst. Webb nodded. How are our systems? Green across the board. The quantum drives are purring like kittens. Very large, very angry kittens that could vaporize a planet, but kittens nonetheless. The Helios array is charged and ready. Shield generators are at full capacity. Armor matrix is calibrated and responsive. We're as ready as we'll ever be. Good. All hands, battle stations. This is not a drill. Alarms sounded throughout the massive ship. Crew members rushed to their combat positions. Bulkhead doors sealed. Weapon systems came online. Shields hummed to life, creating invisible barriers around the hull. The timer reached 0. The Indomitable crossed into the outer range of the Confluence fleet. Korthax watched the human ship enter his weapons envelope and gave the order he had been waiting to give. All ships open fire. Target their engines and weapons systems. I want that ship crippled, not destroyed. Fire at will. 300 capital ships and 6,000 support vessels opened fire simultaneously. The void lit up with thousands of energy beams, plasma streams, missile contrails, and kinetic rounds. The combined firepower of the largest fleet ever assembled converged on a single target. The Indomitable's shields flared brilliant white as the barrage struck. The viewscreen automatically dimmed to protect the crew's eyes. Energy readings spiked across every sensor. Then the light faded and the Indomitable was still there, still moving, not even slowing down. Report. Korthax roared. Direct hits confirmed, sir. All weapons struck the target. But sensors show minimal damage. Their shields absorbed most of the impact. and what got through was deflected by their hull. That's impossible. No shield can withstand that kind of concentrated fire. I'm telling you what the sensors show, Admiral. That ship took everything we threw at it and barely noticed. On the Indomitable's bridge, Webb reviewed the damage reports. Minor shield fluctuations on decks 7 through 12. Hull integrity at 99.4%. No casualties. No significant damage. They hit us with everything they had, Lieutenant Nowak said, awe evident in his voice. And we didn't even feel it. Oh, we felt it, Amara corrected. The shields absorbed about 60% of the kinetic energy. The armor took the rest and distributed it across the entire hull structure. We felt it. We just didn't care. Webb allowed himself a small smile. Lieutenant Chen, open a channel to the Confluence flagship. Let's talk to Admiral Korthax. The view screen shifted, showing the bridge of the Eternal Dominance. Korthax sat on his command throne, scales rigid with shock. Admiral Korthax, Webb said calmly, as if he were discussing the weather rather than flying through a hostile fleet. I am Commander Marcus Webb of the human warship Indomitable. You demanded our surrender. We decline. You threatened to destroy us. We remain unimpressed. Now I'm going to give you a choice. You have no right to offer me anything human. Korthax snarled. You are one ship against my entire fleet. Surrender now or be destroyed. You just tried to destroy us, Webb replied. It didn't work. Now pay attention, because I'm only going to say this once. Order your fleet to stand down and withdraw from this system. Do it now and no one else has to die today. You're insane. I have 300 capital ships. You had 300 capital ships, Webb corrected. Past tense, because in about 10 seconds you're going to have significantly fewer. Helmsman, maintain course and speed. Weapons, prepare the Helios array. Demonstration mode. Korthax's eyes widened. What are you? Webb cut the connection. Chief Engineer, you said there was a 5% chance of catastrophic failure. I want to make sure we're in the 95%. Too late for doubts now, Commander, Amara said, her fingers flying across her console. Helios array charging. Containment field stable. Plasma collectors at optimal temperature. Focusing array deploying now. On the exterior of the Indomitable, massive panels along the bow began to slide open. Beneath them, a complex array of magnetic coils, plasma chambers, and focusing lenses emerged. The entire structure was 300 meters across, a weapon system larger than most ships in the Confluence fleet. What is that thing doing? Someone shouted on Korthax's bridge. All ships, evasive action. Get out of its firing arc. But the Confluence fleet had arranged itself in a perfect sphere. To evade, ships would have to break formation, and that would take time. Time they didn't have. Helios array charged, Amara reported. Ready to fire on your command. Webb looked at the tactical display. The Indomitable was now in the center of the enemy formation, surrounded on all sides by hostile ships. Exactly where he wanted to be. You had your chance, Admiral, Webb said quietly. Fire. The Helios array unleashed hell. From the focusing lens, a beam of concentrated stellar plasma erupted. It wasn't a laser or a particle beam. It was actual matter torn from the heart of a captured quantum singularity, compressed and accelerated to a fraction of light speed, heated to temperatures that existed only in the cores of stars. The beam was 2 meters wide and burned with the brightness of a sun. It cut through the first Confluence ship like a knife through paper. The cruiser's shields flared for a microsecond before collapsing. The beam punched through the hull, through the interior, through the far side, and continued on to the next ship, and the next, and the next. The Indomitable rotated slowly on its axis, sweeping the beam across a 40-degree arc. 47 ships died in 6 seconds. They didn't explode. They didn't break apart. They simply ceased to exist, vaporized by temperatures that turned metal, polymer, and organic matter into ionized gas. Cease fire, Webb ordered. The beam cut off. Silence fell across every bridge in the Confluence fleet. 47 ships had been reduced to glowing clouds of superheated vapor. The crews, the weapons, the decades of construction, all gone in seconds. Korthax stared at the tactical display in horror. 47 icons had simply vanished. 47 crews, thousands of people, erased from existence. What? What was that? His tactical officer whispered. That, Webb's voice came through the communication channel, was a demonstration. That was me showing you what happens when you threaten humanity. That was me using less than 5% of this weapon's maximum output. The view screen showed Webb's face again. His expression was cold, hard, devoid of mercy. I could turn that beam on your flagship right now, Webb continued. I could vaporize you, your crew, and every ship within 10,000 kilometers. I could turn your entire fleet into gas and dust. But I won't. Not yet. Because I want you to go back to the galactic confluence and tell them exactly what you saw here today. You're a monster, Korthax breathed. No, Admiral, I'm a human. And we're done being dismissed, threatened, and pushed around. We're done accepting that other species have the right to determine our fate. We're done apologizing for existing. Webb leaned forward. Now order your fleet to withdraw, or I will demonstrate exactly how monstrous we can be when we're forced to. Korthax looked around his bridge. Every officer stared at him, waiting for orders. He looked at the tactical display, at the clouds of vapor that had been ships, at the massive human vessel that sat in the center of his formation, like a predator among prey. He had 300 ships. The human had one. By every tactical principle he knew he should attack. He should use his superior numbers. He should coordinate fire and overwhelm the enemy. But tactical principles assumed both sides were playing the same game. The humans had changed the rules. All ships, Korthax said slowly, each word tasting like ashes. Withdraw to defensive positions. Do not engage the human vessel. Repeat, do not engage. Admiral, his tactical officer questioned. You saw what that thing did, Korthax shouted. It destroyed 47 ships in 6 seconds. It took our best shot and didn't even slow down. If we attack, it will kill us all. Withdraw, now. The Confluence fleet began to move, ships breaking formation and retreating to safe distances. They maintained weapons lock but held their fire, creating a corridor through which the Indomitable could pass. Webb watched the fleet part before him like water before a ship's bow. Maintain course for Nexus Prime Station. Standard approach speed. The Indomitable continued forward, flying through the gap in the blockade. Not a single shot was fired. 300 ships simply watched as one human vessel passed through their midst, unstoppable and unchallenged. We're through the blockade, sir, Lieutenant Nowak reported. His voice was shaking slightly. Nexus Prime Station is in visual range. Take us into orbit above the Galactic Council chamber, Webb ordered. And Lieutenant Nowak? Yes, sir. Send a message to Ambassador Kovac. Tell her we've arrived, and we'd like to have a word with the Council. The Galactic Council chamber had never been so quiet. High Arbiter Zelthon stood at his station, all 4 arms gripping the railing so hard his metallic scales were turning white. Around him, the representatives of the 12 confluence species sat in stunned silence. On the main holographic display, the Indomitable hung in orbit above Nexus Prime Station. The massive ship rotated slowly, its weapons arrays clearly visible pointed directly at the chamber. Every council member could see it through the transparent dome above their heads. It blotted out the stars. Report, Zelthon croaked. His voice sounded like rust. Admiral Korthax's face appeared on the communication screen. The old warrior looked like he had aged a decade in the past hour. High Arbiter, the blockade fleet has withdrawn to defensive positions. The human vessel passed through our formation without difficulty. We engaged with full force. It was ineffective. Ineffective? Ambassador Zilith's antennae trembled. You had 300 ships. How can it be ineffective? Because that thing absorbed everything we threw at it and then destroyed 47 of our capital ships in 6 seconds. Korthax replied flatly. I've been a military commander for 6 decades. I've never seen anything like it. It has a weapon that fires concentrated stellar plasma. It turned those ships into gas. Not debris, gas. Silence fell again. Several ambassadors looked like they might be sick. We need to evacuate the station, Ambassador Trell said urgently. If that weapon is aimed at us, it's too late for that, Zelthon said bitterly. We're hostages now. If we try to leave, they'll destroy us. If we stay, they'll destroy us. We have no options. There's always options, a new voice said. Every head turned toward the entrance. Ambassador Elena Kovic walked into the chamber, flanked by 2 human guards. She looked calm, composed, almost serene. She walked to the center of the floor and looked up at Zelthon. You wanted to judge humanity, Elena said. You wanted to decide if we were worthy of existing. Well, the Indomitable has delivered our response to your judgment. Now it's time for us to judge you. You dare, Zelthon started. I dare, Elena interrupted. Because right now I have 8 kilometers of human engineering sitting above your heads, with enough firepower to reduce this entire station to its component atoms. So yes, High Arbiter, I dare. Now sit down and listen. Zelthon sat. He had no choice. The main display shifted, showing Commander Webb's face. He sat in his command chair, backlit by the soft glow of the Indomitable's bridge displays. His expression was neutral, but his eyes were hard. Members of the Galactic Confluence, Webb began, his voice carrying throughout the chamber. 26 hours ago, you delivered an ultimatum to humanity. You demanded our surrender, our submission, our enslavement. You threatened to destroy us if we refused. You positioned fleets around our worlds, aimed weapons at our cities, and prepared to commit genocide against an entire species. He paused, letting the words sink in. You did this based on manufactured evidence. You did this based on fear. You did this because you're a collection of old empires terrified of anything new, anything different, anything that might challenge your comfortable dominance, and you thought we would simply roll over and accept your judgment. The display shifted again, showing new footage. This time it showed Confluence military operations, secret documents, intercepted communications. Elena had been busy during her time at the station. These are records of Confluence black operations over the past century, Webb continued. Operations against 17 different species. Every one of them was accused of being too aggressive or too expansionist or too dangerous. Every one of them was given the same choice you gave us: surrender or die. Most surrendered. The 3 that refused were destroyed. More images appeared, showing devastated worlds, extinct species, civilizations reduced to ruins. You've been running a protection racket, Webb said coldly. You maintain your position by crushing anyone who might eventually challenge you. You don't wait for species to become actual threats. You eliminate potential threats before they can become real. It's efficient. It's ruthless, and it ends today. You can't threaten us. Zelthon found his voice. You have 1 ship. Even if it's powerful, you can't stand against the entire Confluence. You're right, Webb agreed. 1 ship can't conquer the galaxy. 1 ship can't occupy your worlds. 1 ship can't enforce our will across thousands of systems. But here's what 1 ship can do. The tactical display appeared, showing the Indomitable's weapons range overlaid on a map of the Nexus system. 1 ship can destroy every military installation in this system. 1 ship can reduce your fleet to particles. 1 ship can turn Nexus Prime Station into a debris field. 1 ship can eliminate your entire command structure in under 5 minutes. Webb's expression hardened. And if we do that, what happens to the Confluence? What happens when your central government is gone? When your fleets have no coordination? When your member species realize there's no one to enforce your authority anymore? The implications rippled through the chamber. The Confluence was held together by central authority and military power. Remove both and the entire structure would collapse into chaos. You're talking about destroying galactic civilization, Ambassador Trell said quietly. No, Elena interjected. We're talking about destroying your empire. Civilization will survive. It might actually thrive without your boot on its neck. What do you want? Zelthon asked. The fight had gone out of him. What are your demands? Webb leaned forward in his chair. First, the immediate withdrawal of all Confluence forces from human space. Every ship, every station, every spy. You leave and you don't come back without explicit permission. Zelthon nodded slowly. Agreed. Second, the dissolution of the Confluence military blockade program. No more siege fleets positioned around developing species. No more ultimatums. No more extortion disguised as protection. That's impossible, Zilith protested. How would we maintain order? You wouldn't, Webb replied. Because maintaining your version of order requires threatening everyone who disagrees with you. Find a better way or find yourselves without an empire. Third, Elena continued, reparations. Not to humanity. To the species you've oppressed. To the civilizations you've crushed. To everyone who's ever been told they're too small, too young, too weak to have a voice. You're going to make amends? That could take centuries, Ambassador Trell said. Then you'd better get started, Elena replied. Fourth and finally, a new council. This one, she gestured around the chamber, is disbanded. You've proven yourselves unfit to govern. A new council will be formed, with representation from all species, not just the old powers. Humanity will have a seat along with every other species you've tried to suppress. The chamber erupted in protest. Representatives shouted over each other, some in outrage, others in fear. Zelton raised all four arms for silence. And if we refuse these demands? He asked quietly. Webb's finger hovered over a control on his command chair. Then I give the order and the Helios array fires at full power. Nexus Prime Station ceases to exist. Your government dies. Your fleets scatter. And humanity withdraws to our own space to wait and see what crawls out of the ruins you leave behind. You would kill thousands to make your point? You were willing to kill billions to maintain your power, Webb countered. Don't lecture us about proportional response. We didn't start this. We didn't want this. But we're damn sure going to finish it. Elena walked closer to Zelton Station. You made a mistake, High Arbiter. You thought humanity was like the other species you've crushed. Young, weak, easily frightened. You thought if you showed us your power, we'd bow down. But you forgot something important. What's that? Humanity doesn't bow, Elena said simply. We can't, it's not in our nature. You can kill us, scatter us, burn our worlds, but you can't make us submit. And that's what terrifies you, isn't it? That's the real reason you wanted us gone. Not because we're aggressive, not because we're expansionist, but because we refuse to accept that anyone has the right to rule us without our consent. She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of each representative. You had a galaxy where everyone knew their place, where old empires ruled and young species obeyed, where power was static and change was forbidden. Then humanity showed up and refused to play by your rules. We grew too fast. We adapted too quickly. We asked too many questions. And worst of all, we gave other species ideas. What if they don't have to obey? What if they can say no? What if the old order isn't actually order at all? Just tyranny with a prettier name. You'll bring chaos, Zelton said quietly. We'll bring change, Elena corrected. Change is chaotic. It's messy. It's unpredictable. It's also necessary. Your confluence has been stagnant for thousands of years. You've maintained peace by crushing anyone who might disturb it. That's not peace. That's just the absence of open war. Real peace comes from cooperation, from respect, from recognizing that every species has the right to determine its own destiny. She turned back to Webb's image. Commander, what's the status of our backup? Webb smiled. It wasn't a pleasant expression. Backup is en route. 2 to 3 hours. Zelton's scales went rigid. Backup? You said this was one ship. I said the Indomitable was coming, Webb corrected. I never said it was alone. Admiral Korthax, you might want to check your long-range sensors. You're about to have company. On the Eternal Dominance, Korthax's tactical officer gasped. Admiral, we're detecting multiple mass signatures approaching from the outer system. Large signatures. Very large. How many? 12, sir. They're matching the mass and energy profile of the Indomitable. Korthax felt his primary heart skip a beat. 12 more? They have 12 more of those things? Apparently, his tactical officer replied weakly. In the council chamber, pandemonium broke out. Representatives shouted at each other, at Zelton, at Elena. Some demanded they surrender immediately. Others called for a fight to the death. Most simply looked terrified. Silence. Zelton roared. The chamber quieted. He looked at Elena, and there was something like grudging respect in his eyes. You've made your point, Ambassador. You've demonstrated that humanity can defend itself. You've shown us the cost of trying to destroy you, but you're asking us to dismantle an empire that's existed for 7,000 years. You're asking us to give up power we've held since before your species discovered fire. Why should we believe this won't just replace our tyranny with yours? Elena considered the question. Because we don't want to rule you. We just want to be left alone to grow, to explore, to make our own mistakes and learn from them. We want a galaxy where species rise and fall on their own merits, not at the whim of an empire that's afraid of change. She gestured at the Indomitable hanging above them. We built that ship in secret. We could have built an invasion fleet. We could have struck first, eliminated your leadership, shattered your empire before you even knew we were a threat. But we didn't. We built one ship and we sent it here to prove a point, not to conquer. And if we agree to your demands? Zelton asked. If we disband the Confluence, withdraw our forces, accept this new order you're proposing, what guarantee do we have that you won't turn those 13 warships against us the moment we're weak? Webb answered. You have my word as a military officer, and you have the word of every human crew member on these ships. We didn't build them to conquer. We built them to ensure no one could ever force us to choose between slavery and death again. If you leave us in peace, we'll leave you in peace. But if you ever threaten us or any other species the way you threatened us today... He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Zelton looked around the chamber one last time. He saw fear, anger, resignation. He saw an empire crumbling, an old order dying. And he saw something else, possibility. The possibility that maybe, just maybe, the humans were right, that maybe the galaxy could be more than it was. Very well, he said finally. The Confluence accepts your terms. We will withdraw from human space. We will disband the blockade program. We will begin reparations. And we will convene a new council with broader representation. He straightened, regaining some of his dignity. But know this, Ambassador Kovach, you've won today. You've broken our power and remade the galactic order. But the future you're creating is uncertain. You're unleashing forces that have been contained for millennia. Change is coming, and not all of it will be good. I know, Elena said quietly, but it will be real. And it will be ours to shape. 3 months had passed since the Indomitable arrived at Nexus Prime. 3 months since the Confluence fleet scattered before a single human warship. 3 months since the galaxy changed forever. Commander Marcus Webb stood in the observation deck of the Indomitable, now stationed in high orbit above Earth. Below him, his homeworld turned peacefully. Blue and white and green, beautiful, worth fighting for, worth killing for if necessary. He didn't like that last thought, but he couldn't deny its truth. You've been standing here for an hour, Dr. Amara Chen said, walking up beside him. She carried 2 cups of coffee, offering him one. Either you're having a philosophical crisis or you're avoiding paperwork. Both, Webb admitted, accepting the cup. How are the new ships coming along? Ships 2 through 13 are all operational. We're working on 14 through 18 in the orbital yards. Should be ready in another 6 months. Amara sipped her coffee. We're also getting requests from other species. Turns out when you demonstrate that you can build ships that make the old guard obsolete, everyone wants to learn your secrets. What did we tell them? The polite version of not a chance in hell. The technology isn't for sale, trade, or theft. Humanity's defensive advantage stays with humanity. She glanced at him. Though we are sharing some of the less sensitive innovations through the new council. Agricultural improvements, medical technology, some of the computational systems, enough to show we're willing to cooperate without giving away the weapons. Webb nodded. That was the balance they had to strike. Show that humanity could be a partner, not just a threat. Prove that their refusal to submit didn't mean they wanted to dominate. Have you heard from Elena? He asked. She's still at Nexus Prime working on the new council formation. Apparently it's like herding cats, except the cats are ancient alien civilizations with thousands of years of grudges against each other. Amara smiled. She says it's going better than expected, which probably means it's only a complete disaster instead of a catastrophic one. She's good at what she does. She's good at preventing wars. You're good at winning them. Humanity is lucky to have both. Webb wasn't so sure about that. He looked down at Earth and thought about all the things that could have gone wrong. If the Indomitable's armor had failed, if the Helios array had exploded, if the Confluence had called their bluff and attacked with everything they had, any of those outcomes would have meant extinction. We gambled the fate of our entire species on one ship, he said quietly. We rolled the dice and hoped they'd come up in our favor. That's not strategy. That's desperation dressed up as confidence. It worked, Amara pointed out. This time. What about next time? Next time we'll have more ships. More options. More experience. She looked at him seriously. Marcus, we did what we had to do. We were facing extinction. We found a way to survive. You can second-guess yourself forever, but it won't change what happened. The question isn't whether we made the right choice. The question is what we do now. Before Webb could respond, his communicator chirped. Lieutenant Nowak's voice came through. Commander, we're receiving a priority transmission from Nexus Prime. Ambassador Kovach requests a real-time conference. Put it through to the observation deck. A holographic display materialized, showing Elena Kovach standing in what looked like a conference room. She looked tired but satisfied. "Commander Webb, Dr. Chen," Elena greeted them. "I wanted to give you an update on the council situation. It's official. The new Galactic Assembly has been formed. 43 species have seats, including humanity. We're no longer supplicants or threats. We're recognized as equals." "That's good news," Webb said. "What about the former Confluence members?" "Still adjusting. Selthon actually resigned his position. Last I heard, he went back to his homeworld to retire. The Corthelians elected a new representative, someone younger and less invested in the old ways. Most of the other old guard species are following similar patterns. They're realizing that the galaxy moved on without asking their permission. Any resistance? Anyone trying to restore the old order? Some grumbling, some protests, but nothing organized. Turns out most species were just as tired of the Confluence's heavy-handed rule as we were. They just didn't have the power to resist. Now that someone finally stood up to the bullies, everyone else feels empowered to speak up too." Elena's expression grew more serious. "But that brings me to the real reason I'm calling. We have a problem. 3 systems that were under Confluence protection have started fighting each other. Old territorial disputes that were suppressed are flaring up now that there's no empire to keep them in line. We need to decide how to handle it." Webb frowned. "What are the specifics?" "The Tarkon and Velik systems both claim ownership of a mineral-rich asteroid belt between their territories. The Confluence decided the issue 100 years ago, but neither side accepted the ruling. They just didn't have the power to resist. Now they're mobilizing fleets. Let me guess," Amara said. "They want humanity to enforce the peace?" "Some council members are suggesting it, yes. They're calling for the Assembly to have a peacekeeping force. And since we have the most advanced military technology, we'd end up being the enforcers," Webb finished. "We'd become the new Confluence, just with a prettier name and better intentions." "That's my concern too," Elena admitted. "But if we don't intervene, those 3 systems might destroy each other. Millions could die. We have the power to stop it. Don't we have the responsibility to use that power?" Webb looked at Amara, then back at Elena's hologram. "What does the rest of the council say?" "They're divided. Some say it's not our business. Some say we should intervene immediately. Some want to negotiate. Some want to establish rules before we act. It's a mess, Marcus. And while we debate, people are loading weapons and preparing for war." Webb walked to the view screen, looking out at the stars. Somewhere out there, species that had just been freed from one empire were about to start killing each other over old grudges. Somewhere out there, the galaxy was discovering that freedom without order was just chaos with a better reputation. "Here's what I think," he said slowly. "The Confluence was wrong. They maintained peace through fear and force. They made decisions for everyone and crushed anyone who disagreed. That was tyranny, and we were right to end it." He turned back to face Elena. "But we can't just walk away and let the galaxy burn. We have power. We have technology. We have ships that can stop wars before they start. The question isn't whether we should use that power. The question is how we use it without becoming what we fought against. So what do you propose?" Webb thought for a moment, then nodded as the pieces came together in his mind. "The new assembly needs a defense force, but it can't be dominated by any one species. We'll contribute ships and technology, but so will others. We'll train crews from multiple species. We'll establish clear rules of engagement that require assembly approval before any military action." "A coalition force," Amara said, "with checks and balances built in." "Exactly. And for this Tarkon-Velik situation, we don't send warships. We send mediators backed by the implicit threat that if they start killing each other, the Assembly will intervene. We give them a choice. Negotiate your differences or face consequences. But the consequences come from all of us, not just humanity." Elena considered this. It could work. It's not perfect, but nothing will be. At least it's an attempt at shared responsibility instead of might makes right. "There's something else," Webb added. "We need to be clear about what humanity's role is in this new galaxy. We're not the police. We're not the rulers. We're just one species among many, and we have the right to defend ourselves and our interests. But we also have the responsibility to not abuse our power." "That's a narrow path to walk," Elena said. "It is, but the alternative is either becoming the new oppressors or standing by while others suffer. I'd rather try for the difficult middle ground." A new voice interrupted. "Well said, Commander." Webb turned to see Admiral Korthax's image appearing next to Elena's hologram. The old warrior looked different than he had 3 months ago. The rigid certainty was gone, replaced by something more thoughtful. "Admiral," Webb acknowledged, "I didn't expect to hear from you. I've been appointed as the Corthelian representative to the new Assembly's Defense Committee," Corthax explained. "It seems my experience with defeat qualifies me to help build something better than what we had before." "That's very diplomatic of you." Corthax's scales rippled in what might have been amusement. "I learned something when the Indomitable flew through my fleet, Commander. I learned that the certainty I'd carried for 67 years was false. I thought I knew how the galaxy worked. I thought I understood power. You taught me otherwise." "I didn't mean to humiliate you," Webb said honestly. "I know. That's what made it worse. You weren't trying to prove superiority. You were simply defending your right to exist. And that defense was so overwhelming, so absolute, that it broke every assumption I had about galactic order." Corthax leaned forward. "But here's what I realized in the aftermath. Maybe those assumptions needed to be broken. Maybe the old order needed to die so something better could emerge." "You've changed your tune," Amara observed. "I had 3 months to think about what happened. 3 months to watch the confluence collapse. 3 months to see dozens of species breathe freely for the first time in centuries." Corthax's expression was serious. The confluence maintained peace through fear. It worked after a fashion, but it also stifled growth, suppressed innovation, and made every young species choose between submission and extinction. That's not sustainable. Eventually, someone was going to say no. It just happened to be humanity. "And now you're helping build a new system," Elena said. "I am, because the galaxy needs order, but it needs the right kind of order. Order based on mutual respect instead of mutual fear. Order that allows growth instead of suppressing it. Order that can adapt to change instead of crushing it." Corthax looked at Webb. "Your proposal for a coalition defense force is sound. The Corthelian fleet will contribute ships and crews. We'll work with humanity and others to establish something that serves the Assembly, not any single empire." Webb felt something ease in his chest. If even Corthax could see the value in cooperation, maybe there was hope. "Thank you, Admiral. Your support means a lot. Don't thank me yet. We're entering uncharted territory. The galaxy has never tried to govern itself through cooperation before. This will be difficult, messy, and there will be failures. But," Corthax smiled slightly, "I'd rather try something new and difficult than continue something old and wrong." The conference continued for another hour, working through details and procedures. By the end, they had the outline of a plan. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. After the call ended, Webb and Amara stood in silence for a while, watching Earth turn below them. "Do you think it will work?" Amara asked. "I think we have to try," Webb replied. "We broke the old order. Now we have to help build something better. If we don't, we're just destroyers, not liberators. Heavy burden for one species to carry. We're not carrying it alone. That's the whole point. Humanity doesn't rule the galaxy. We just reminded everyone that they don't have to accept being ruled." Webb finished his coffee. "The next few decades are going to be chaos. Species learning to work together instead of competing for dominance. Old grudges being aired and resolved. New alliances forming. It's going to be messy. But it will be real," Amara said, echoing Elena's words from months ago. "It will be real," Webb agreed. He looked up at the Indomitable, hanging in orbit like a silent guardian. 12 more ships like it were scattered across human space, with more under construction. They were symbols of humanity's refusal to submit. Monuments to the idea that no species should have to choose between slavery and death. But they were also responsibilities. Every one of those ships was a reminder that power needed to be wielded carefully, that the line between defense and aggression was thin, that good intentions could still lead to terrible outcomes. "Come on," Webb said finally. "We have work to do. The new galaxy won't build itself." They left the observation deck together, 2 humans among billions, walking toward an uncertain future that they had helped create. Above them, the Indomitable kept its eternal watch, weapons cold but ready, shields down but prepared. It was a promise and a warning, a promise that humanity would defend its freedom and help others find theirs. A warning that anyone who tried to take that freedom would face something they couldn't overcome. The galaxy had learned its lesson. Humanity would not bow. Humanity would not break. Humanity would not go quietly into extinction. And more importantly, humanity would not become the thing they had fought against. They would walk the narrow path between strength and tyranny, between defense and aggression, between protecting their own and respecting others. It wouldn't be easy. But as Commander Marcus Webb had told the Galactic Assembly in his first official address, humanity didn't reach the stars by choosing the easy path. We got here by refusing to accept that anything was impossible. Now we'll prove that species can share a galaxy without one dominating all the others. We'll prove that strength and cooperation aren't opposites. We'll prove that the future can be better than the past. The speech had been broadcast across known space. Some species had cheered. Some had remained skeptical. Some had scoffed at human idealism. But all of them had listened, because for the first time in 7,000 years, the galaxy had hope that things could change. And it had all started with one ship, one crew, and one simple message delivered with overwhelming force. Humanity will not submit. Humanity will not die quietly. And if you try to make us, you'll discover exactly what we're capable of when our backs are against the wall. The message had been received. The galaxy was changing, and somewhere in the depths of space, 13 human warships waited patiently, hoping never to fire their weapons in anger again, but ready to do so if the need arose, because that was the burden humanity had accepted. The weight of being strong enough to defend themselves without becoming the oppressor, the responsibility of having the power to change the galaxy, and the wisdom to use that power carefully. It was a heavy burden. But as Webb had told his crew on that fateful day when they approached the Confluence fleet, we're not just fighting for ourselves. We're fighting for everyone who's ever been told they don't matter. And in the end, that fight had been won, not through conquest but through demonstration, not through domination but through determination. Humanity had earned its place among the stars. Now came the harder part, proving they deserved to keep it. The massive ship floated in the darkness of space like a metal mountain. Inside its cold halls, millions of alien warriors waited for their moment. They had been waiting for a very long time. 10,000 years to be exact. Commander Vexa Thule walked through the weapon chambers of the ship called Eternal Conquest. His 6 arms moved with perfect control as he checked each plasma rifle. His black eyes scanned every piece of battle armor. Everything had to be perfect. They had only one chance to get this right. The Zethkari were not like humans. They were taller, stronger, and much more deadly. Their skin was gray like old metal, and their bodies were built for war. Each warrior had been changed from birth to be the perfect killer. Their bones were harder than human bones. Their muscles were stronger. Their hearts beat slower but pumped blood that carried more oxygen. They could see in the dark, hear sounds from far away, and smell fear. But the most important thing about the Zethkari was their patience. They did not rush into battle like wild animals. They planned. They studied. They waited until they knew everything about their enemy. For 10,000 years they had been studying the humans of Earth. Vexthul stopped at a large window and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there was a small blue planet called Earth, the 3rd planet from a yellow star, home to billions of creatures called humans. Soon, very soon, that planet would belong to the Zethkari Dominion. The commander touched a button on his arm. A hologram appeared in the air in front of him. It showed a human male, naked and helpless on a metal table. The Zethkari had captured this human many years ago from one of their spaceships. They had cut him open and studied every part of his body. Humans were weak, the scientist had told him. Their bones broke easily. Their skin was soft and could be cut with simple blades. They could not see in the dark. They could not hear high sounds or low sounds. They were slow and clumsy compared to Zethkari warriors. The hologram changed. Now it showed human cities. Tall buildings made of glass and metal. Roads filled with metal boxes that carried humans from place to place. The humans called these cities advanced, but the Zethkari had cities that floated in the clouds of gas. Giants. Human technology was like toys compared to what the Dominion could build. Another touch of the button showed human weapons. Guns that shot small pieces of metal. Bombs that made fire and smoke. Flying machines that dropped more bombs. The humans thought these weapons were powerful, but Zethkari shields could stop their bullets. Zethkari armor could survive their bombs. Their flying machines were slow and easy to shoot down. Vexthul had seen all of this data thousands of times. Every Zethkari warrior had studied it until they knew it by heart. They knew how humans walked, how they talked, how they fought, and how they died. There would be no surprises when the invasion began. The commander walked deeper into the ship. He passed training rooms where young Zethkari practiced killing techniques on human-shaped dummies. He heard the sound of plasma weapons firing at targets that looked like human soldiers. In one room, warriors practiced fighting in Earth gravity, which was lighter than the gravity on the Zethkari homeworld. In another room, the smartest Zethkari studied human behavior. They watched videos that had been stolen from Earth's communication networks. They saw humans at work, at play, at war. They learned how humans reacted to fear, to pain, to loss. They studied human leaders and human followers. They mapped out every human city, every human military base, every human government building. The planning had been perfect. The Zethkari knew exactly where to strike first. They would attack the human military bases and destroy their weapons. They would capture the human leaders and make them surrender. They would take control of the human communication networks and spread fear. Within days, maybe hours, the human resistance would collapse. Vexthul entered the war room, where his top officers waited for him. The room was filled with floating displays that showed Earth from every angle. Red dots marked the targets they would hit first. Blue lines showed the paths their ships would take. Green areas showed where they would land their troops. General Kethvar, his second in command, stood beside the largest display. She was even taller than Vexthul, and her forearms were covered in scars from 100 battles. She had led the invasion of 12 different worlds. Earth would be her 13th victory. "The fleet is ready, Commander," she said in their clicking language. 1,000 ships, 10 million warriors, enough firepower to destroy every human city in one day. Vexthul nodded. "And our intelligence is complete?" "Yes, sir. We know the location of every human military base. We have maps of every human city. We know how their weapons work and how to defeat them. We have studied their battle tactics and found weaknesses in all of them." Another officer stepped forward. This was science leader Mextoth, whose job was to understand human technology. "Their computers are simple to hack," he reported. "Their communication systems are easy to jam. Their power plants can be shut down from orbit. Once we cut off their electricity, their cities will go dark." "What about their space defenses?" Vexthul asked. "Laughable," Mextoth replied. "They have a few small stations in orbit around their planet. We can destroy them all in the first minute of the attack. Their rockets are too slow to escape our weapons. They will not even know we are there until it is too late." The war room fell silent as everyone thought about the coming battle. For 10,000 years, the Zethkari had prepared for this moment. They had built the greatest war fleet in the galaxy. They had trained the most deadly warriors. They had gathered the most complete intelligence about their enemy. Nothing could go wrong. Vexthul walked to the center of the room and activated the main display. It showed Earth in real time, a blue and white ball hanging in the darkness. Clouds swirled over the oceans. The night side of the planet sparkled with the lights of human cities. "Beautiful," whispered General Kethvar. "It will be a fine addition to the Dominion." "The humans will fight," said another officer. "They always do." "Let them fight," Vexthul replied. "We have studied their wars. They fight with emotion instead of logic. They make mistakes when they are afraid or angry. They waste resources trying to save civilians instead of focusing on military targets. Their compassion makes them weak," Hideo pointed to different areas on the planet. "We will hit their military first, then their government centers, then their major cities. The survivors will surrender within a week." "And if they don't surrender?" asked a young officer. Vexthul's black eyes grew cold. "Then we will show them why the Zethkari Dominion rules half the galaxy." The meeting continued for several hours. They reviewed every detail of the invasion plan. Which ships would attack which targets, which troops would land in which cities, how they would deal with human resistance, how they would control the human population after the conquest. Everything had been thought of. Every possibility had been planned for. The Zethkari had fought wars against dozens of different species across the galaxy. They had conquered worlds with technology more advanced than Earth. They had defeated enemies stronger, faster, and smarter than humans. Earth would be easy. When the meeting ended, Vexthul returned to his private quarters. The walls were covered with trophies from his past victories, weapons taken from defeated enemies, flags from conquered worlds, the skull of a Rigelian war chief who had thought he could resist the Dominion. Soon he would add human trophies to his collection. The commander sat at his desk and opened a communication link to the Dominion homeworld. The face of Supreme Leader Zixthul appeared on his screen. She was ancient even by Zethkari standards, and her wisdom was respected throughout the galaxy. "Commander," she said in greeting, "are you ready to bring glory to the Dominion?" "Yes, Supreme Leader. The fleet awaits your orders. 10,000 years we have prepared for this moment. 10,000 years of planning, training, and building. The humans will learn what happens to those who possess something the Dominion wants." Vexthul bowed his head. "They will learn quickly, Supreme Leader." "See that they do. The galaxy watches us, Commander. Other species wonder if the Zethkari have grown weak during this long preparation. Show them that we have not. Show them that the Dominion's power only grows with time. It will be done." The communication ended, and Vexthul sat alone in his quarters. Outside his window, the stars looked the same as they had for 10,000 years. But tomorrow, everything would change. Tomorrow, the Zethkari would claim their prize. He opened another file on his computer. This one contained psychological profiles of human leaders, presidents, prime ministers, generals, and scientists. The Zethkari had studied them all. They knew their fears, their weaknesses, their breaking points. When the time came to make them surrender, the Dominion would know exactly what to say and what to do. The file also contained information about human culture, their music, their art, their stories. Vexthul found it all very strange. Humans created things that served no practical purpose. They told stories about heroes who sacrificed themselves for others. They made music that stirred emotions instead of conveying information. They painted pictures of things that did not exist. The Zethkari had no art, no music, no stories except for battle reports. They found human culture wasteful and confusing. But they had studied it anyway, because understanding an enemy meant understanding everything about them. One thing in the files had puzzled Zethkari scientists. Humans seemed to fight harder when they were protecting something they loved. Their battle effectiveness actually increased when their families or friends were in danger. This made no logical sense. Fear should make a warrior weaker, not stronger. The Zethkari had decided this was probably wrong information. No species could fight better when afraid. It went against everything they knew about warfare. The humans must have been lying in their historical records, trying to make themselves seem braver than they really were. It did not matter anyway. The humans would not have time to be afraid. The attack would be so fast and so overwhelming that resistance would be impossible. Vexthul closed the files and prepared for sleep. Tomorrow would be a very busy day. The greatest invasion in Dominion history would begin at dawn, Earth time. By sunset, the blue planet would belong to the Zethkari. He activated the ship's communication system and spoke to his entire fleet. "Warriors of the Dominion," he said. "Tomorrow we claim our prize. 10,000 years of preparation end tomorrow. 10,000 years of victory begin tomorrow. Sleep. Well, for tomorrow we make history." All across the fleet, millions of Zethkari warriors settled in for their last night of waiting. Their weapons were clean and ready. Their armor was polished and checked. Their minds were focused on the battle to come. They had no doubt about the outcome. How could they? They were Zethkari. They were the perfect warriors. They had studied their enemy for 10,000 years. What could possibly go wrong? The sun was just starting to rise over the mountains of Montana when the sky caught fire. Jake Morrison had woken up early because it was his 12th birthday, and he was too excited to sleep. Today was going to be the best day ever. His mom had planned a paintball party at the old Henderson farm, and all his friends were coming. They were going to play war games in the big field behind the barn. Jake was eating breakfast and watching the sunrise when he saw the first shooting star. Then he saw another one, then another. Pretty soon the whole sky was full of them, streaking down like bright orange tears. "Mom," he called, "come look at this." His mother, Sarah Morrison, came to the kitchen window, carrying a cup of coffee. She looked up at the sky and frowned. "That's weird. I don't remember hearing about any meteor shower." The shooting stars were getting bigger and brighter. Some of them were making noise now, a whistling sound that got louder and louder. One of them looked like it was heading right for the Henderson farm. "Maybe we should call off the party," Sarah said, starting to sound worried. "No way," Jake said. "This makes it even cooler. It's like a space battle." Neither of them knew that it really was a space battle. High above Earth, Zethkari ships were launching thousands of drop pods toward the surface. Each pod contained a squad of elite warriors trained to kill humans. The pods were designed to survive atmospheric entry and land with pinpoint accuracy at their targets. The problem was that Zethkari intelligence had made a small mistake. Commander Vexthul stood in the command center of his drop pod as it fell toward Earth. Around him, 11 other Zethkari warriors checked their weapons one final time. Their mission was simple: capture or destroy the human military training facility designated as Target Alpha 7. According to their intelligence files, Target Alpha 7 was a fortified compound where human soldiers practiced combat techniques. The facility was surrounded by obstacles designed to train warriors. It had multiple buildings for storing weapons and housing troops. Satellite images showed humans in camouflage clothing moving around the area in organized formations. It was clearly an important military base, and destroying it would send a message to all human forces. Nowhere was safe from the Zethkari dominion. The drop pod hit the ground with a tremendous crash, sending dirt and grass flying in all directions. Steam hissed from its cooling vents as the side panels blew open. 12 deadly alien warriors poured out, their plasma weapons ready to kill anything that moved. Vexthul activated his tactical display and scanned the area. His enhanced vision picked up heat signatures moving around the compound. Approximately 20 human soldiers were present, just as intelligence had predicted. Some were taking cover behind obstacles. Others were moving in what appeared to be flanking maneuvers. "Perfect," he whispered in his clicking language. "They know we are here, but they think they can fight us." He raised his plasma rifle and signaled to his squad. "For the Dominion," he roared, and charged toward the nearest building. What he found inside was not what he expected. Instead of military equipment, the building was full of folding tables covered with party decorations. There were balloons tied to chairs, streamers hanging from the ceiling, and a big birthday cake with 12 candles. A banner stretched across one wall that read, "Happy Birthday, Jake." Vexthul stopped and stared. This did not match any of his intelligence reports. "Commander," one of his warriors called from outside, "the human soldiers are attacking." Vexthul rushed back outside and saw something that made his blood freeze. The humans were not soldiers at all. They were small, much smaller than adults. And they were wearing bright-colored clothing instead of military uniforms. They were human children, and they were shooting at his warriors with some kind of projectile weapons. A bright green ball of something splattered across Vexthul's helmet visor, temporarily blinding him. He stumbled backward, trying to wipe the substance away, when something wrapped around his legs. He looked down and saw that he had become tangled in a rope obstacle course. "Got one?" shouted a high-pitched human voice. Vexthul's enhanced hearing picked up the sound of more projectiles being fired. His warriors were calling out in confusion as more colored substances hit their armor and weapons. The tactical displays on their helmets were starting to malfunction as paint seeped into the electronic systems. "What is this substance?" demanded Sub-Commander Grixtal over the radio. "Unknown," Vexthul replied, still fighting to free himself from the ropes. "It appears to be some kind of chemical weapon. The human younglings were not running away in fear like they were supposed to. Instead, they were advancing on the Zethkari positions with remarkable coordination. They moved from cover to cover, communicating with each other using hand signals that Vexthul did not recognize. Some of them were flanking his warriors while others provided covering fire. One small human with yellow hair popped up from behind a wooden barrier and threw something at warrior Klexivore. It exploded in a shower of blue paint that covered the warrior's weapon sensors. Klexivore fired blindly, his plasma bolts going wide and hitting a tree. "Commander," another warrior called. "My targeting system is offline. This paint is interfering with all of our electronics." Vexthul finally freed himself from the ropes and tried to assess the situation. His squad of elite warriors was being overwhelmed by human children armed with paint weapons. It was impossible. It was humiliating. It was not supposed to happen. The humans had some kind of advanced camouflage technology. Even though Vexthul could see them clearly, his tactical computer kept losing track of them. They would disappear behind obstacles and reappear somewhere else as if they could teleport. Actually, they were just running around and hiding behind trees. But the Zethkari had never encountered enemies who moved so randomly and unpredictably. All of their combat training was based on fighting organized military units that followed logical tactics. These humans seemed to have no tactics at all. They just ran around shooting paint and making loud noises. "Retreat to defensive positions," Vexthul ordered. "Form a perimeter around the drop pod." His warriors tried to follow the order, but the humans adapted instantly. Instead of attacking the perimeter directly, they started climbing trees and shooting down at the Zethkari from above. Others crawled through tall grass and attacked from unexpected angles. One warrior, Thexmul, found himself surrounded by 3 small humans who had somehow snuck up on him without triggering his motion sensors. They hit him with so much paint that he could not see, hear, or breathe properly. He stumbled around in circles, firing his plasma rifle at nothing. "I cannot see," he called over the radio. "The paint has covered all of my sensors." "Use manual targeting," Vexthul replied. "I am trying, but they move too fast." It was true. The human children were incredibly agile. They rolled, jumped, crawled, and climbed with an ease that Zethkari warriors could not match. Their small size allowed them to hide in places that would not provide cover for an adult. And they seemed to have no fear at all. Jake Morrison was having the time of his life. When the aliens had first appeared, he had been scared for about 10 seconds. But then he realized that their weapons did not seem to be hurting anyone. The bright beams they fired just made scorch marks on the ground and trees, and the aliens themselves were not as scary as they first appeared. They were big and ugly, sure, but they moved clumsily in their heavy armor. Their weapons were bulky and slow to aim, and best of all, they seemed to be completely confused by paint. "Tommy," Jake called to his best friend, "get the paint grenades from the supply shed." Tommy Chen nodded and sprinted toward a small building where Jake's mom had stored extra paintball supplies. The aliens tried to shoot at him, but he was too fast and too small a target. Their energy beams passed over his head as he slid under a picnic table. Meanwhile, Jake's sister Emma had figured out something important. The aliens' helmets had glowing sensors on the front, probably cameras or something. If you could hit those sensors with paint, the aliens seemed to become almost helpless. Emma was only 9 years old, but she was a very good shot. She had been playing paintball with her older brother for 2 years. She knew how to lead a moving target and how to arc her shots over obstacles. She lined up carefully and fired a purple paintball right at the nearest alien's helmet sensor. The alien stopped moving and started making angry clicking sounds. It spun around in circles trying to find her, but she had already moved to a new position. "Emma," Jake called. "That was awesome. Try to get the big one." The big one was Commander Vexthul, who was still trying to understand what was happening. His squad of elite warriors was being defeated by human larvae. It made no sense. His intelligence reports had said that human children were weak and helpless. They were supposed to run away crying when they saw Zethkari warriors. Instead, they were laughing, actually laughing as they shot paint at the most feared soldiers in the galaxy. "Commander," Sub-Commander Grixtel's voice crackled over the radio. "I am receiving reports from other units. Similar situations are occurring all over the planet." "What do you mean, similar situations?" Vexthul demanded. "Strike Team Beta landed at what they thought was a military command center. It turned out to be a place where elderly humans practice slow-motion combat techniques. The humans are using some kind of martial arts to redirect our plasma fire back at us. Vexthal felt his blood pressure rising. What about Strike Team Gamma? They attacked what appeared to be a fortified human position in a place called London. It was actually some kind of sporting event. The humans threw explosive projectiles at them and then charged with primitive weapons while making loud war cries. This was insane. Every single intelligence report was wrong. The humans were not behaving like any species the Zethkari had ever encountered. They were not even behaving like intelligent beings at all. A small human with red hair suddenly appeared next to Vexthal. The commander spun around and tried to grab the child, but she was already gone. Something wet and cold hit the back of his neck. He reached up and felt sticky birthday cake icing dripping down his armor. "She got you good, Mr. Alien," Jake Morrison called from somewhere nearby. "Nice shot, Amy." Amy Henderson, whose farm was being used for the birthday party, grinned as she reloaded her paintball gun. She had never seen anything as funny as these clumsy aliens trying to fight a bunch of kids. They had cool armor and fancy weapons, but they moved like they had never played a game in their lives. And that gave her an idea. "Hey everybody," she called out. "Let's play tag. The aliens are it." The other kids immediately understood. Instead of trying to hide from the aliens, they started running around them in circles, getting closer and closer. The aliens spun around trying to keep track of them, but there were too many kids moving too fast in too many directions. Jake ran up and tapped Commander Vexthal on the leg. "You're it," he called, and ran away. Another kid ran up and tapped Sub-Commander Grixtal. "You're it too." Soon all 12 alien warriors were spinning in circles as human children ran around them like a pack of playful animals. Every few seconds one of the kids would dart in, touch an alien and dart away again. The Zethkari tried to grab the children, but they were too slow. They tried to shoot them, but the kids were too close to their own warriors. They tried to form a defensive formation, but the children kept running between them and breaking up their ranks. Commander Vexthal made a decision that would haunt him for the rest of his life. "All units," he said into his radio. "This is Commander Vexthal. Execute emergency extraction protocol. Repeat, execute emergency extraction protocol." "Sir?" Sub-Commander Grixtal said in confusion. "Are you ordering a retreat?" "I am ordering a strategic withdrawal," Vexthal replied with as much dignity as he could manage while a 9-year-old girl put birthday cake in his air intake vents. "But sir, these are only human children. Surely we can defeat them." Vexthal looked around at his squad of elite warriors. They were covered in paint and cake frosting. Their weapons were jammed, their sensors were offline, and they were being treated like toys by human larvae. "Sub-Commander," he said quietly, "if this is what human children can do to us, I do not want to find out what human adults are capable of." Around the world, the Zethkari invasion was falling apart in ways that defied all logic and military experience. In Tokyo, Strike Team Beta had landed in Ueno Park, expecting to find a human military training facility. Instead, they found 60 elderly Japanese citizens practicing Tai Chi in the morning sunshine. The humans moved slowly and gracefully, their arms flowing like water, their feet stepping lightly on the grass. Squad leader Kexmore had almost felt sorry for them. These ancient humans would not even be able to run away when the plasma fire started. The attack would be over in seconds. He was wrong. When the first Zethkari warrior fired his plasma rifle, something impossible happened. The nearest elderly human, a tiny woman who looked about 100 years old, simply moved her arm in a small circle. The plasma bolt changed direction and hit another Zethkari warrior in the chest. "What just happened?" Kexmore demanded over his squad radio. "The human deflected my plasma fire," came the confused reply. She barely moved, but somehow she redirected the energy beam. More Zethkari opened fire, and more plasma bolts were redirected. The elderly humans continued their slow-flowing movements, but now every motion seemed to guide another energy beam back toward its source. The aliens found themselves shooting each other, while their targets remained completely calm. One ancient man, moving no faster than a gentle breeze, walked straight through a group of Zethkari warriors. As he passed each one, he touched them lightly on the arm or shoulder. The warriors collapsed immediately, paralyzed by some technique that their medical scanners could not identify. "Retreat," Kexmore ordered. "Fall back to the drop pods." But retreating was easier said than done. Every time a Zethkari warrior tried to move, one of the elderly humans would appear beside them with impossible silence. A gentle touch would send the warrior spinning through the air to land in a tangled heap. A light push would cause a fully armored soldier to lose his balance and crash into his squad mates. The humans never moved quickly. They never showed anger or excitement. They just continued their slow, peaceful dance while the most elite warriors in the galaxy fell around them like leaves in autumn. In London, Strike Team Gamma was having an even worse time. Intelligence reports had identified Wembley Stadium as a major defensive position. Satellite images showed thousands of humans gathered inside a circular fortification. The humans were clearly preparing for battle, as evidenced by their tribal war chants and coordinated movements. What the Zethkari had not understood was that they had attacked during a football match between Manchester United and Chelsea. 80,000 fans were already worked up into a frenzy when alien drop pods started crashing onto the football pitch. For about 3 seconds, the crowd was silent with shock. Then someone in the Manchester United section stood up and shouted, "Bloody hell, they're trying to stop the match." What happened next would be studied in military academies across the galaxy for centuries to come, assuming anyone survived to tell the story. 80,000 football fans became 80,000 soldiers in the span of a heartbeat. They did not flee in panic or wait for instructions from authorities. They simply decided that these aliens were not going to ruin their game. The first wave of attacks came from the upper sections. Fans started throwing everything they could get their hands on. Beer bottles, meat pies, scarves, shoes, and coins rained down on the alien warriors like a metal and fabric hailstorm. Most of the projectiles were harmless individually, but there were thousands of them coming from every direction. Squad leader Rexville raised his plasma rifle to return fire, but a fish and chips container hit him right in the helmet sensor. As he clawed at the greasy paper stuck to his visor, a foam finger bonked him on the head, then a rubber ball, then someone's jacket, then a folding chair that someone had somehow managed to throw from the upper deck. "These humans have powerful throwing weapons," he reported to his commander. "Negative," came the reply. "Intelligence reports indicate that humans have weak arms and poor accuracy." "Then intelligence is wrong," Rexville shouted as a London AZ guidebook bounced off his armor. "They are bombarding us with hundreds of different projectiles." But the real shock came when the fans started leaving their seats. Instead of running away from the aliens, they were running toward them. Thousands of humans poured onto the football, pitch from every direction, waving banners and chanting something that sounded like war cries. "United, united, united," chanted half the crowd. "Chelsea, Chelsea, Chelsea," chanted the other half. But within minutes, both groups were chanting something else. "Get the aliens, get the aliens, get the aliens." The Zethkari had trained to fight organized military units with clear command structures and predictable tactics. They had never encountered anything like a football riot that had spontaneously decided to defend Earth. The humans had no weapons except their bare hands and whatever they could pick up, but they had something that was far more dangerous. They were absolutely fearless. They charged straight at plasma rifles without hesitation. When their friends fell, they did not retreat. They got angrier and fought harder. Worse yet, they were learning. The first group of fans to reach the aliens got knocked down by plasma fire, but the ones behind them watched carefully and saw that the alien weapons took a few seconds to recharge between shots. They timed their attacks perfectly, rushing in during the recharge cycle and tackling the warriors before they could fire again. Other fans noticed that the aliens had trouble aiming at multiple targets, so they spread out and approached from different angles, forcing the Zethkari to choose which threat to engage first. While the aliens were shooting at one group, another group would hit them from behind. Still, other fans figured out that the alien armor had weak joints. They started aiming their tackles at knees, elbows, and neck seals. Several Zethkari warriors found themselves flat on their backs with their helmets knocked off, surrounded by angry humans who were taking selfies with alien technology. "This is impossible," Rexville called to his squad. "These humans have no military training, but they are fighting like professional soldiers." Request immediate extraction, another warrior replied. They have somehow weaponized their stadium food. The chemical burns are eating through my armor. That was actually just curry sauce from a knocked-over food stand, but the Zethkari had no way of knowing that. Meanwhile, in suburban America, things were getting even stranger. Soccer mom Janet Patterson had been driving her minivan to pick up her daughter from volleyball practice when the alien drop pods started falling from the sky. One of them had crashed right in the middle of Maple Street, blocking her path home. Janet was not in a good mood. She had already been to the grocery store, the dry cleaners, and the pharmacy that morning. She still had to pick up her other kids from their various activities, start dinner, and help with homework. She did not have time for an alien invasion. When the drop pod opened and armored warriors poured out with plasma rifles, Janet's first thought was not fear for her life. It was annoyance that someone was blocking traffic in her neighborhood. She rolled down her window and called out, "Excuse me, could you move your spaceship? I need to get through." The Zethkari warriors stared at her in confusion. According to their intelligence, humans were supposed to flee screaming when confronted by alien soldiers. This female was sitting calmly in her transportation vehicle and making demands. "Human," squad leader Zexstar called out in broken English. "You will surrender or be destroyed." Janet looked at her watch. "Look, I really don't have time for this. My daughter's practice ends in 10 minutes, and if I'm late, Coach Martinez will make the whole team run extra laps. Just move your thing to the side so I can get by." One of the warriors raised his plasma rifle and pointed it at Janet's minivan. She looked at the weapon with interest. "Is that supposed to be a gun? Because it looks more like a hairdryer. My daughter has one that's almost the same color." The warrior fired a plasma bolt at the ground next to her van, creating a small crater in the asphalt. He expected the human to panic and flee. Instead, Janet sighed and opened her door. "Fine, if you won't move it, I'll move it myself." What happened next would become known throughout the Zethkari fleet as the minivan incident. Janet reached into her vehicle and pulled out a tire iron. She walked straight up to the nearest alien warrior, pushed his plasma rifle aside like it was a toy, and started whacking his armor with the metal tool. "Move," clang, "your," clang, "ship," clang. The warrior stumbled backward, more shocked than hurt. His combat protocols had no instructions for dealing with an angry human female wielding primitive tools. "Zexstar," he called to his squad leader. "The human is attacking me with some kind of blunt weapon." "Shoot her," Zexstar replied. "I cannot. She's too close to my position." Janet had figured out that if she stayed within arm's reach of an alien, the others could not shoot her without hitting their teammate. She continued to beat on the warrior's armor while calling out to her neighbors. "Hey everyone. These aliens are blocking our street. Come help me move their ship." Doors opened all along Maple Street. Instead of hiding in their houses, the suburban humans came out to investigate. They saw one of their neighbors fighting alien invaders with a tire iron and decided to help. Bob Chen emerged from his garage carrying a leaf blower. "Get away from Janet, you jerks." He turned on the machine and aimed it at the nearest Zethkari warrior. The powerful airstream filled the alien's helmet vents with dust and leaves, making it impossible for him to see or breathe properly. Mrs. Garcia came running from next door with a garden hose. She turned it on full blast and started spraying the aliens' electronic equipment. Sparks flew as water seeped into their weapon systems. Teenager Mike Wilson rode up on his skateboard and started circling the confused warriors at high speed. Every time he passed one, he would whack it with his skateboard. The aliens spun around trying to track him, but he was too fast and kept changing direction. Soon the entire neighborhood had joined the fight. Suburban humans armed with lawnmowers, power tools, sports equipment, and kitchen utensils were overwhelming elite alien soldiers who had trained their entire lives for combat. The problem was that the Zethkari had trained to fight other military forces, not angry civilians defending their homes. Military units had predictable objectives and followed recognizable tactics. These humans seemed to have no plan except make the aliens go away so we can get back to our lives. They used whatever was available as weapons. They attacked from unexpected directions. They showed no fear of superior firepower, and worst of all, they were teaching each other new tactics in real time. Aim for the joints in their armor, Mrs. Garcia called out as she continued spraying aliens with her hose. There, helmets come off if you hit them just right, added Bob Chen, who had discovered this by accident. The big guns are really slow, Mike Wilson shouted as he ollied over a plasma rifle. Just stay close and they can't hit you. Commander Vex Thule received increasingly frantic reports from strike teams around the globe. In Australia, his warriors had encountered humans who seemed to have trained native animals to fight alongside them. In Russia, they were being defeated by humans using primitive tools like hammers and wrenches. In Brazil, the humans had somehow turned a festival parade into a coordinated military assault. Everywhere the pattern was the same. The humans were not behaving like any species in Zethkari records. They adapted instantly to new situations. They cooperated without central command. They used their environment creatively. And they absolutely refused to be intimidated by superior technology. Commander, General Kethavar's voice crackled over the fleet communication system. I am receiving retreat requests from 60% of our strike teams. They claim to be overwhelmed by human resistance. That is impossible, Vex Thule replied, though his own squad was currently being chased around a farm by 12-year-olds. Humans are primitive and disorganized. Tell that to Strike Team Zeta. They landed at what they thought was a human government facility. It turned out to be something called a DMV. The humans inside were already angry about something, and when our warriors interrupted their waiting, they became extremely aggressive. Our squad is currently barricaded in a bathroom while 200 humans try to break down the door. Vex Thule closed his eyes and tried to think. 10,000 years of preparation. 10,000 years of intelligence gathering. 10,000 years of training the most elite military force in the galaxy, and they were being defeated by birthday parties, old people, sports fans, and suburban families. How is this possible? As the 4th minute of the invasion ticked by, Commander Vex Thule began to understand the horrible truth. The Zethkari had spent 10,000 years preparing to fight the wrong enemy. Every piece of intelligence they had gathered about humans was technically correct but completely wrong. Yes, humans were physically weaker than Zethkari warriors. Yes, their technology was less advanced. Yes, their weapons were primitive. But none of that mattered, because the Zethkari had fundamentally misunderstood what made humans dangerous. They had studied human armies and assumed that was how all humans fought. They had analyzed human governments and thought that was how all humans organized. They had observed human cities and believed that was how all humans lived. But armies, governments, and cities were just the surface of human civilization. Underneath was something far more complex and far more dangerous: human creativity. The reports coming in from around the world painted a picture that made no sense to military minds trained in logic and order. Humans were not just fighting back, they were improvising weapons and tactics that had never been seen before. In Paris, a street musician named Henri had somehow turned his accordion into a sonic weapon. The instrument's bellows could produce sound waves that interfered with Zethkari communication systems. When Henri played certain notes, the aliens' helmets would screech with feedback so loud that the warriors had to remove them or go deaf. But Henri was not satisfied with just disrupting their communications. He had quickly figured out that different notes affected different pieces of alien equipment. High notes made their weapons overheat. Low notes scrambled their tactical displays. And when he played a waltz, the aliens' armor joints would lock up, freezing them in whatever position they were in. Within minutes, Henri had taught his technique to other musicians in the area. Soon the entire Latin Quarter echoed with the sound of accordions, violins, and trumpets as street performers waged acoustic warfare against alien invaders. In Nebraska, a group of kindergarten teachers had made an even more disturbing discovery. The finger paints they used in their classrooms were apparently visible to alien sensors in ways that human eyes could not detect. When Mrs. Henderson painted a blue handprint on a Zethkari warrior's chest, every other alien in the area could see it glowing like a beacon on their tactical displays. The teachers quickly realized they could use the paint to mark aliens for tracking, create false targets to confuse their sensors, and even paint camouflage patterns that would make humans invisible to alien technology. 5-year-olds were running around the playground painting elaborate designs on trees and playground equipment, turning the entire area into a maze of false signals that made alien targeting systems completely useless. But the most terrifying report came from Australia, where Dr. Sarah Kim had done something that violated every assumption about human behavior in crisis situations. Dr. Kim was a wildlife biologist who had been studying saltwater crocodiles when the aliens landed near her research station. Instead of fleeing for safety, she had spent the first 3 minutes of the invasion teaching the crocodiles to hunt alien technology. It turned out that Zethkari energy weapons produced a specific electromagnetic frequency that drove local wildlife into a feeding frenzy. Dr. Kim had noticed this when a plasma rifle discharge sent every crocodile in the area into an aggressive hunting mode. Instead of running away from the dangerous aliens, the crocodiles were actively seeking them out. "This is Dr. Kim at Darwin Research Station," she reported over emergency radio frequencies. "I have successfully weaponized the local ecosystem against alien invaders. The crocodiles are now actively hunting alien technology signatures. I repeat, we have turned crocodiles into anti-alien missiles." That report was disturbing enough, but what came next was worse. Other wildlife researchers around the world started reporting similar phenomena. In Alaska, polar bears were tracking alien heat signatures. In Africa, elephants were coordinating group attacks against drop pods. In the Amazon, poison dart frogs were somehow getting inside alien armor. Humans were not just adapting to fight the aliens themselves. They were recruiting every living thing on the planet to join the fight. Commander Vexthul tried to process this information while dodging birthday cake thrown by human children. How do you fight an enemy that can turn anything into a weapon? How do you plan tactics against opponents who make up new strategies every few minutes? The answer, he was beginning to realize, was that you cannot. The most disturbing example came from suburban Chicago, where the invasion had encountered something that broke every rule of warfare: a family barbecue. The Williams family had been grilling burgers in their backyard when Drop Pod 47 crashed through their fence. Squad leader Pextel had expected to find cowering civilians who would surrender immediately when faced with superior firepower. Instead, he found Grandpa Williams, age 78, standing over his grill with a spatula in one hand and a beer in the other. "Well, I'll be damned," Grandpa Williams said as 12 alien warriors poured out of the smoking pod. "Martha, come see this. We got ourselves some space visitors." Grandma Martha Williams came out of the kitchen carrying a pitcher of lemonade and a plate of cookies. She looked at the armed aliens and shook her head disapprovingly. "Now you boys put those guns down before someone gets hurt," she said in the tone of voice that had raised 6 children and intimidated dozens of grandchildren. "You're guests in our backyard, and guests behave themselves." Pextool raised his plasma rifle, but something stopped him from firing. The elderly female human was walking straight toward him with no sign of fear, carrying food and drink like she was greeting neighbors. His tactical training had no protocols for this situation. "Are you boys hungry?" Grandma Martha continued. "You look like you haven't had a good meal in days. Sit down and have some burgers. Dave makes the best burgers in the neighborhood." "Grandpa." Dave Williams nodded and flipped another patty on the grill. "Medium or well done?" he asked the nearest alien. The Zethkari warriors looked at each other in confusion. These humans were offering them food instead of weapons. They were being kind instead of fearful. Nothing in their training had prepared them for enemies who tried to feed them. "We are here to conquer your planet," Pextel explained in halting English. "Well, that sounds like hard work," Grandpa Dave replied. "You'll need to keep your strength up. Martha, get the folding chairs from the garage. These boys look tired." What happened next would be studied in xenopsychology courses across the galaxy. Instead of fighting, the Williams family began treating the alien invasion force like unexpected dinner guests. They offered food, drinks, comfortable places to sit, and friendly conversation. The Zethkari, who had been trained to handle resistance, surrender, or flight, had no idea how to respond to hospitality. Their cultural programming had no framework for understanding kindness from an enemy. They stood in the Williams' backyard, holding their weapons awkwardly, while an elderly human couple tried to make them feel welcome. "Now, what planet are you boys from?" Grandma Martha asked as she handed out paper plates. "It must have been a long trip." Do you have families back home? We are warriors of the Dominion, Pextool managed to say. That's nice, dear. What kind of work do you do when you're not conquering planets? The question broke something in Pextool's mind. What did he do when he was not conquering planets? He had been born to be a warrior. He had been trained to be a warrior. He had lived his entire life preparing to be a warrior. He had never considered what else he might be. I do not understand the question, he admitted. Everyone needs hobbies, Grandpa Dave said, handing him a burger. Me? I like working on old cars. Martha here quilts. What do you like to do? For fun? Fun. Another concept that had no translation in Zethkari culture. What was fun? What was the purpose of activities that did not serve military or survival functions? While Pextool struggled with these philosophical questions, his squad was experiencing something equally disturbing. The Williams family's neighbors had noticed the commotion and come over to investigate. Instead of calling for help or running away, they were joining the impromptu barbecue. "Hey, Dave," called Tom from next door. "Who are your new friends?" "Space aliens," Dave replied casually. "They're here to conquer the planet, but they looked hungry, so we invited them to stay for dinner." "Cool. Mind if I grab a beer from your cooler?" "Help yourself." "Aliens, this is Tom. He's my neighbor." "Tom, this is... What did you say your name was?" "I am Squad Leader Pextool of the Zethkari Dominion," the confused warrior replied. "Nice to meet you, Pete," Tom said, shaking the alien's armored hand. "Love the costume. You guys doing some kind of science fiction thing?" Within an hour, the Williams backyard was full of neighbors, all treating the alien invasion as an interesting social event. They asked questions about alien technology, shared stories about their own lives, and generally made the Zethkari warriors feel like they were part of a community gathering rather than a military operation. It was psychological warfare of the most subtle and devastating kind. The aliens had come prepared to face fear, hatred, and violence. They were not prepared to face acceptance, curiosity, and kindness. Similar scenes were playing out across the planet, but not all of them were so peaceful. In downtown Phoenix, office workers had discovered that their daily coffee addiction gave them a significant advantage over alien invaders. The Zethkari nervous system was apparently hypersensitive to caffeine. When Strike Team Delta had landed outside a Starbucks, they were quickly overwhelmed by baristas armed with espresso machines. A single shot of concentrated coffee when thrown at an alien warrior would send him into convulsions that lasted for several minutes. The office workers had quickly figured this out and organized themselves into caffeine combat units. They moved from coffee shop to coffee shop, gathering ammunition and recruiting more fighters. Within an hour, downtown Phoenix was patrolled by humans carrying thermoses full of dark roast, hunting alien invaders like caffeinated vigilantes. In New York City, the situation was even more chaotic. A group of teenagers had discovered that alien technology was vulnerable to computer viruses, if you knew how to deliver them. It turned out that alien communication systems were designed to automatically connect to any electronic network they encountered, assuming that primitive human technology could not possibly threaten advanced Zethkari systems. They were wrong. 16-year-old Marcus Chen, who spent most of his time playing video games and arguing with people online, had figured out how to hack alien armor using his gaming controller and a modified smartphone. He could turn off their weapons, lock up their movement systems, or even make their helmets display embarrassing memes instead of tactical information. "Yo, check this out," Marcus called to his friends as he made an alien warrior's visor display, a dancing cat video. "I got root access to their whole network. I can see everything they're doing." His friend Ashley grabbed a tablet and started helping. "Can you turn off their ships?" "I'm trying, but their firewall is pretty good. Give me a few more minutes." While Marcus and Ashley worked on cyber warfare, their other friends were providing physical support. Tommy was using his drone to drop water balloons on aliens from above. Sarah was riding her hoverboard in circles around confused warriors, using a laser pointer to mess with their optical sensors. It was like watching children play video games, except the characters they were controlling were real alien soldiers worth millions of credits each in training and equipment. Commander Vexithul received all of these reports while still trapped at a birthday party in Montana. His communications officer was trying to coordinate responses while covered in finger paint. His weapons specialist was attempting to clean cake frosting out of his plasma rifle. His tactical analyst was working on untangling himself from party streamers. The situation was beyond military disaster. It was beyond military comprehension. The humans were not fighting like any species the Zethkari had ever encountered. They were not even fighting like a military force at all. They were fighting like humans. And that, Vexthul realized, was exactly the problem. The Zethkari had studied human soldiers, human weapons, and human tactics. But soldiers, weapons, and tactics were just tools that humans used. They were not what made humans dangerous. What made humans dangerous was that they never stopped being creative, never stopped adapting, and never stopped trying to solve problems in new ways. When faced with superior technology, they did not surrender. They figured out how to use that technology against itself. When confronted with impossible odds, they did not despair. They changed the rules of the game. Every human was a scientist, an engineer, a tactician, and an artist all rolled into one. They could not be predicted because they were constantly inventing new ways to be unpredictable. And worst of all, they were teaching each other these new techniques in real time, using communication networks that the Zethkari had dismissed as primitive toys. By the end of the 4th minute, Commander Vexthul knew with absolute certainty that the invasion had already failed. Not because the humans were stronger or better armed, but because they were something that the Zethkari could never defeat. They were human. The only question now was whether any of his warriors would survive long enough to retreat. The 5th minute of the invasion began with Commander Vexthul making the most difficult decision of his military career. As birthday cake dripped from his helmet, and human children continued to use his elite warriors as playground equipment, he opened a fleet-wide communication channel. "All units, all ships, this is Commander Vexthul," he said, trying to maintain what dignity he could while a 9-year-old girl braided ribbons into his armor joints. "Execute Protocol Omega-7 immediately. Full tactical withdrawal. All ground. Forces return to extraction points. Repeat, full retreat." The communication channel exploded with confused responses from squad leaders across the planet. "Sir, did you say retreat?" came the voice of squad leader Rexville from London. "We cannot retreat. We are Zethkari. We do not retreat from primitives." In the background of Rexville's transmission, Vexthul could hear what sounded like 80,000 humans chanting something about football and alien heads. There was also a rhythmic banging sound as if someone was using alien armor as a drum set. "Squad leader Rexville, what is your current tactical situation?" Vexthul asked. We are barricaded inside a human waste facility while thousands of humans attempt to break down the barriers. They have somehow organized themselves into coordinated assault groups using primitive communication methods like shouting and text messaging. They are sharing tactical information faster than our computers can process. Can you fight your way to your extraction point? Negative, sir. The humans have learned to predict our movement patterns. Every time we try to advance, they are already waiting for us. They have turned their entire city into a maze of obstacles and ambush points. And sir, they are laughing while they do it. That last part was what bothered Vexthul the most. The humans were not desperate defenders fighting for their lives. They were treating the invasion like some kind of game. They were enjoying themselves. Another voice crackled over the radio. "Commander, this is Squad Leader Kexmore from the Tokyo landing zone. Request permission to surrender to the local humans." "You want to surrender?" Vexthul asked in shock. "To humans." "Sir, they have offered us tea and small cakes. They say they want to learn about our culture and share their own. They have been very polite and welcoming. Fighting them seems rude." Vexthul closed his eyes. His warriors were not just being defeated, they were being converted. "All units," he said firmly. "No surrendering to humans, no accepting their food or drink, no cultural exchanges. Just return to your drop pods and prepare for extraction." But even that simple order was proving impossible to follow. The humans had adapted to Zethkari tactics with terrifying speed. They no longer waited for the aliens to make the first move. They were actively hunting alien warriors throughout their cities. In Los Angeles, Strike Team Epsilon found themselves being tracked by humans using modified traffic cameras and cell phone networks. Every time they tried to move, text messages would spread their location to nearby humans within seconds. Groups of civilians would appear from all directions, armed with whatever they could find: garden hoses, paint cans, kitchen utensils, exercise equipment, and musical instruments. The humans had also figured out how to jam Zethkari communications using garage door openers and baby monitors. Several squads had gone completely silent, cut off from their commanders and each other. In Miami, the situation was even stranger. The humans had somehow convinced local wildlife to join their resistance efforts. Squad leader Tex Moore reported being attacked by coordinated groups of pelicans, dolphins, and flamingos, all apparently working together under human direction. The dolphins are using echolocation to track our underwater movements, he reported. The pelicans are dive bombing our positions with fish-based projectiles, and the flamingos. Sir, I do not know how to describe what the flamingos are doing, but it is very disturbing. Commander Vexthul tried to imagine what pink birds could possibly do to elite alien warriors, then decided he did not want to know. The worst reports were coming from rural areas, where humans had access to large amounts of farm equipment and agricultural chemicals. In Kansas, Strike Team Zeta had been defeated by a farmer using a crop duster to spray them with liquid fertilizer. The chemicals had not harmed their armor, but the smell had overwhelmed their air filtration systems, forcing them to remove their helmets. Once their helmets were off, the humans had easily captured them using farm animals and rope. The squad was currently being held prisoner in a barn, while local children fed them corn and asked them questions about space travel. But the most humiliating defeat came from suburban Denver, where Strike Team Eta had been overwhelmed by a group of soccer moms armed with minivans and cell phones. The humans had discovered that alien drop pods were just the right size to be towed by large vehicles. Within minutes of landing, Eta's pod had been hitched to a suburban assault vehicle and dragged through the streets of Denver, while the human driver called out tactical updates to other minivan operators over hands-free communication systems. Target, secured and mobile, the human had reported to her network. Heading east on Maple Street. Sarah, can you block their exit at the intersection? Jennifer, bring your jumper cables. I think we can disable their electronics. The Zethkari warriors had found themselves trapped inside their own drop pod, being transported against their will by humans who seemed to think alien invasion was some kind of neighborhood emergency that could be solved through proper organization and teamwork. By the time they managed to blast their way out of the pod, they were surrounded by 47 minivans, each operated by a different soccer mom with extensive experience in coordinating complex logistics under pressure. The aliens had surrendered within minutes, but perhaps the most disturbing report came from rural Oregon, where Dr. Jim Peterson, a retired high school science teacher, had apparently reverse-engineered alien plasma technology using parts from his garage workshop and a broken microwave oven. This is incredible, Dr. Peterson had broadcast over emergency radio frequencies. These alien energy weapons work on a simple principle of contained plasma generation. Give me a few more hours and I can build one using car batteries and copper wire. Within 30 minutes, half the humans in Oregon were attempting to build their own plasma weapons using household items and internet tutorials. Most of their attempts failed, but enough succeeded to give human resistance forces energy weapons comparable to Zethkari military equipment. Commander Vexthul realized that if the humans were allowed to study alien technology for more than a few hours, they would probably figure out how to improve it. Within days, they might have better weapons than the Zethkari themselves. The evacuation had to happen immediately, before the humans could learn any more. But evacuating was proving almost as difficult as invading had been. The humans had quickly realized that the aliens wanted to leave, and they were doing everything possible to prevent it. In some cases, this meant direct military action. Humans with improvised weapons were attacking drop pods and preventing takeoff. But in other cases, it meant something far more insidious. The humans were being nice to them. Squad leader Pextel, who was still trapped at the Williams family barbecue in Chicago, reported that the humans were actively trying to convince his warriors to stay on Earth. "They have offered us permanent residence," he said over a communication channel that was somehow playing background music. Apparently, little Timmy Williams had figured out how to hack alien radio systems using his iPod. "They say we can live in their neighborhood and become part of their community. Mrs. Williams has offered to teach us how to make something called casserole. You will decline their offer and report to extraction immediately," Vexthul ordered. "But, sir, they are being very kind to us. They want to know about our families, our home planet, our culture. They have shown us pictures of their children and asked us to share pictures of our own offspring. Warrior Klexvor has been telling them about his son's graduation from military academy." This was psychological warfare of the most sophisticated kind. The humans were not trying to defeat the Zethkari through force. They were trying to make them not want to fight at all. Vexthul had to end this invasion before his entire army decided they would rather live on Earth than return to the Dominion. "All extraction craft," he called to the fleet orbiting above. "Begin immediate pickup operations. Use tractor beams if necessary. Do not allow ground forces to delay or resist extraction." The response from Fleet Commander Zixmar was not encouraging. "Commander, we are experiencing technical difficulties with our extraction systems. The humans have apparently learned to interfere with our tractor beam operations. How is that possible?" "We are not certain, sir. It appears that they are using their primitive radio broadcasting systems to generate electromagnetic interference. Every time we try to lock onto a drop pod, human radio stations start playing loud music that disrupts our targeting computers." Vexthul could hear it now. Human music bleeding through his communication systems, turning his tactical radio network into some kind of entertainment broadcast. The songs had names like "We Are the Champions" and "Don't Stop Me Now," and seemed designed to boost human morale while making alien coordination impossible. Some human somewhere had figured out how to use their planet's communication infrastructure as a weapon. Every radio station, television broadcast, cell phone tower, and internet connection was being used to disrupt alien operations. But worse than the technical interference was the psychological effect. The music was catchy. Vexthul found himself unconsciously tapping his armored foot to the rhythm of something called Eye of the Tiger. Several of his warriors were actually humming along to human songs while they waited for extraction. The humans were not just defeating them militarily, they were converting them culturally. "Emergency extraction protocol," Vexthul commanded. "All ships abandon precision targeting. Use wide-area tractor beams to grab everything in a half-kilometer radius around each drop pod. We will sort out our warriors from human debris once we are safely in space." It was not a dignified retreat, but it was the only way to get his army off this insane planet before they all decided to become human citizens. The evacuation began with the sound of massive engines powering up in Earth's atmosphere. Tractor beams swept across the planet's surface, lifting drop pods, alien warriors, and unfortunately large amounts of human property into the sky. From his position in Montana, Vexthul watched his drop pod rise into the air, carrying with it not just his squad but also the birthday party decorations, most of the playground equipment, 3 confused farm animals, and little Jake Morrison, who was still holding a paintball gun and whooping with excitement about his unexpected trip to space. "This is so cool," Jake shouted as they lifted off. "Are we going to your spaceship? Can I see the engine room? Do you have aliens my age I can play with?" Vexthul realized that the evacuation was going to be much more complicated than planned. All across Earth, similar scenes were playing out. Drop pods were lifting off carrying not just Zethkari warriors, but also birthday cakes, garden furniture, confused pets, and enthusiastic humans who thought alien abduction was the best thing that had ever happened to them. Fleet Commander Zixmar's voice crackled over the radio. "Commander, we have a problem. Our ships are now carrying approximately 2,000 human civilians who appear to be treating this as some kind of recreational activity." "Recreational activity?" "They are taking pictures with our crew members, asking for tours of our ships, and requesting autographs from our senior officers. One of them has somehow accessed our food service systems and is attempting to prepare something called pizza for everyone aboard." As the Zethkari fleet prepared to jump to hyperspace, Vexthul looked back at the blue planet that had just humiliated the greatest military force in the galaxy. Earth was still there, still spinning peacefully, still full of humans who had treated an alien invasion like an interesting interruption to their daily lives. The final communication from Earth came through on emergency frequencies as they reached the edge of the solar system. It was a transmission from the United Nations, speaking for all of humanity. "Attention alien visitors," came the voice of UN Secretary General Maria Santos. "We're sorry to see you leave so soon. If you ever want to come back for a peaceful visit, you're always welcome. We've learned a lot from you today, and we hope you've learned something from us too. Have a safe trip home, and remember, there's always room for more friends on Earth." As the fleet jumped to hyperspace, Commander Vexthul began composing his report to the Dominion High Council. How do you explain that 10,000 years of preparation had been defeated by 5 minutes of human unpredictability? How do you tell the greatest military minds in the galaxy that they had been defeated not by superior weapons or tactics, but by kindness, creativity, and an absolute refusal to take anything seriously? Behind them, Earth continued its peaceful rotation around the sun. The humans had already started uploading videos of the alien invasion to their internet networks. Within hours, the entire event had become a series of memes, jokes, and heartwarming stories about the day aliens came to visit, and everyone made new friends. The Zethkari updated their galactic navigation charts, marking Sol 3 with a new designation. "Quarantine zone. Inhabitants are extremely dangerous. Avoid at all costs. Psychological hazard. May cause existential crisis in military personnel." But for the 2,000 humans who had accidentally been taken aboard Zethkari ships, the adventure was just beginning. By the time the fleet reached Dominion space, the humans had taught their alien captors how to play poker, introduced them to the concept of friendship, and somehow convinced them to redecorate the ships with more colorful and cheerful designs. Commander Vexthul's final report to the High Council was brief and to the point. "Mission failed. Enemy too creative. Recommend immediate reclassification of humans as highest level threat. Also recommend therapy for all returning personnel. Planet Earth has defeated us not through force but by making us question everything we thought we knew about warfare, civilization, and the meaning of life. Suggest we never speak of this incident again." The High Council agreed. The Sol system was marked as forbidden territory, and all records of the invasion were classified at the highest level. But sometimes late at night in the Dominion fleet, alien warriors would gather in small groups and share stories about the strangest day of their lives. The day they learned that the most dangerous thing in the universe was not a weapon or a warrior, but a species that faced the impossible with laughter, creativity, and an absolute refusal to be defeated by anything, no matter how scary it looked. And deep in their alien hearts, some of them secretly wished they could go back to that strange blue planet where everyone was invited to the party.